Chapter 1180. The Elysium's control over their warriors was indeed strict. It was not an exaggeration to say that they were extremely careful. They used the spiritual imprint to ensure their loyalty. At the same time, the existence of the soul lamp ensured that they would not be tampered with by others. It also allowed the Elysium to know if they were dead or alive. Unfortunately, there was nothing in this world that was perfect and flawless. The setup of the gate of heaven was the same. Just like now, the Elysium's arrangements could be easily solved by Chu Xiu as long as he changed his way of thinking. Those arrays were built according to the rules of the mortal realm. The Daoyu Ocean was a completely different world. Now that Chu Xiu had brought Xue Wuli to the Daoyu Ocean, it meant that Chu Xiu had completely isolated him from the mortal realm. Whether it was the spiritual imprint or the soul lamp, they could no longer affect Xue Wuli. Chu Xiu looked at Lu Jianghe and said, "Now it's up to you. Leave the blood god's seal in his body." Chu Xiu had already obtained the complete blood demon magic technique. He naturally knew the blood god's seal. However, Chu Xiu had never used it before. He was definitely not as skilled as Lu Jianghe. Lu Jianghe shrugged and placed the blood god's seal in Xue Wuli's body. After Lu Jianghe placed the blood god's seal, Chu Xiu said to the inner demon in his body, "Separate a bit of power and attach it to this guy's body. Monitor his movements at all times." The inner demon said with some dissatisfaction, "This is the second time you've divided my power. If this goes on, I won't have much power to give you. Don't complain. I've already said that I'll find a chance in the future to make you a perfect body. Then, you can have as much power as you want." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, the inner demon just curled his lips and obediently attached a bit of power to Xue Wuli's body. After everything was set up, Chu Xiu also removed the seal on Xue Wuli's body. However, Xue Wuli was still in a daze, as if he had yet to react. The Elysium seal on him had indeed made him unhappy. Although the seal had been removed, he was not the slightest bit excited. This was because Chu Xiu had instantly added 2 more seals to his body. In the end, the result was still the same. At this moment, Xue Wuli even felt a sense of sorrow. Beautiful women had a short life, and the heavens were jealous of their talents. To think that he, Xue Wuli, was extraordinarily talented. He had fought and killed his way through and finally became the youngest divine general of the Elysium. He did not expect that he had just escaped from the tiger's den and entered the wolf's lair. Seeing Xue Wuli's sentimental appearance, Chu Xiu said indifferently, "All right, don't be so emotional. Following me is much more promising than following the gate of heaven. You have Elysium, Xue Isium, you have, and you to have you have. You have no future in the Elysium. Only if you can become the leader of the Elysium will you be able to have true freedom, or even control the freedom of others. However, do you think you have any hope of becoming the leader of the Elysium?" Xue Wuli shook his head. Although he thought highly of himself, and could even be said to be a little narcissistic, he knew that it was not easy to become the leader of the Elysium. And if he were to help Chu Xiu as a spy for the Heaven Gate, even though it was dangerous now, once the Heaven Gate was destroyed in the future, he would become a hall master of the Kunlun demon cult, and there would still be hope for him to gain true freedom. Therefore, Xue Wuli knew what was good for him and bowed to Chu Xiu. Subordinate Xue Wuli greets the leader. He was not very loyal to the Elysium, and his life was in Chu Xiu's hands. Therefore, he quickly changed his identity. Chu Xiu nodded his head in satisfaction and asked, "The Elysium should know that I have returned. However, in the year that I was not here, why did the Elysium not do anything to the holy cult? Why did they not do anything to me now?" Xue Wuli answered, "Because the leader is injured. To be more precise, he is seriously injured. If it wasn't for the news of the Heavenly Key's appearance, and the news was very clear, I would not have the chance to come out." "What? Jun Wuxian is injured? Who did it? Zhong Xinxiu?" Chu Xiu was really shocked by the news. He had never thought that the reason why the Elysium had not found trouble with him for so long was because of Jun Wuxian's injury. Among the warriors of the lower realm, the only one who could hurt Jun Wuxian was Zhong Xinxiu. Could it be that he and Zhong Xinxiu had some kind of relationship? That was why Zhong Xinxiu came to find trouble with Jun Wuxian after knowing that he had been plotted against by Jun Wuxian. Xue Wuli looked strangely at Chu Xiu. What did this have to do with Zhong Xinxiu? He answered, It's not Zhong Xinxiu. It's because of a very strange thing. I heard about it from Zhu Tianxiao. That's right, Zhu Tianxiao is also one of the 9 great divine generals of the Elysium. He is most proficient in divination. When Jun Wuxian used the head-piercing 7 arrows to plot against you, it was Zhu Tianxiao who calculated your position. According to Zhu Tianxiao, when Jun Wuxian used the head-piercing 7 arrows to plot against you, there seemed to be a figure that appeared in front of Jun Wuxian through a magical connection and severely injured him with a slap. Zhu Tianxiao did not know who that figure was, but when he thought of your situation, he suspected that the figure was Dugu Weiwei. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin. It seemed that he had been thinking too much. The one who had done it was not Zhong Xinxiu. But if it was Dugu Weiwei, then it could really be explained. Anyway, there were too many unclear things about him and Dugu Weiwei, and there were too many connections. Back then, that place was full of marks left by Dugu Weiwei and Ning Xuanji after the fierce battle. Chu Xiu would not be surprised at what those marks did. Has Jun Wuxian's injury not healed yet? Xue Wuli said. Anyway, from the moment I left the Elysium, he has not recovered. Jun Wuxian specifically instructed that before he recovers, no one is allowed to step out of the Elysium. Even looking for the heavenly key requires his personal approval. Hearing Xue Wuli say this, Chu Xiu also breathed a sigh of relief. Since Jun Wuxian was recuperating, he would not be a threat to him for the time being. Next, Chu Xiu asked directly, Okay, then next you can talk about the Elysium. Tell me all the information about the Elysium. The most important thing is, what gate does the Elysium guard? Xue Wuli said with a face of confusion, I don't know either. What? You don't know either? Chu Xiu suddenly frowned. Xue Wuli said innocently, I really don't know. Outsiders think that the divine generals of the Elysium definitely have a lot of power. But in fact, the divine generals of the Elysium only use missions in exchange for a certain degree of freedom. There are only 2 missions for the divine generals of the Elysium. One is to collect the heavenly key, and the other is to be responsible for guarding and strengthening the seals in their respective palaces. There are 10 palaces in the Elysium. In each palace, there is a sealing array left behind from the ancient times. No one knows what is being sealed. The 9 divine generals of the Elysium and the sect leader are responsible for sealing these 10 arrays. I don't know why, but every once in a while, these arrays will go berserk, and we need to use our own strength to resist and strengthen them. Speaking up to this point, Xue Wuli's face revealed a trace of fear. He said sometimes the arrays go berserk because the arrays themselves have aged, and there is a place that needs to be strengthened. But sometimes, it is because there is something on the other side of the array that is attacking the array, and so it goes berserk. And I have a feeling that there seems to be a living thing on the other side of the array. Ever since I became a divine general of the Elysium, I have only experienced a very slight array riot. But I seem to be able to vaguely hear someone speaking on the other side of the array. Although it is very vague and I can't make out what it is definitely someone talking, and not some other messy sound. The existence of the unknown is the most frightening. The other divine generals of the Elysium may have already adapted to these things, but Xue Wuli, a new divine general, was still extremely sensitive to these things. Chu Xiu rubbed his chin and thought for a while. Could it be that the gate that the Elysium guards is behind the Daluotian gate? Could it be that there is a sect or some kind of existence guarding it? Chu Xiu was a little puzzled, but it didn't matter to him anymore. He had no way of investigating these things at the moment, and he didn't have the ability to do so. That was all the useful information that he got from Xue Wuli. As for the rest of the information about how the Elysium trained its disciples, and how cruel the competition for divine generals was, Xue Wuli had personally experienced it. Although it was very detailed, it was of no use to Chu Xiu. The Elysium controlled these divine generals too strictly. It should be said that only the sect master knew all this, and the other so-called divine generals were just tools. But the size of the Elysium was really amazing. According to Xue Wuli, there was a huge secret land in the Elysium. Its area was even bigger than a county in the northern Yan. In that secret land, there were thousands of Elysium disciples. They were all brought to the Elysium since they were young. These disciples could only do two things in the secret land: cultivate and fight, just like raising poisonous insects. Every time the ranking of divine generals, there would be people who were pulled down, and people who were replaced. This was also the reason why the warriors in the Elysium were almost all the best of the same level. It wasn't because they had amazing talent, but because the divine generals in the Elysium who were qualified to enter the Jianghu were 1 in 1,000. They stood out from countless fights, and of course, they were stronger than the warriors of the same level. Therefore, what Chu Xiu had to be vigilant about was that if he really had to fight with the Elysium one day, he had to be careful of the Elysium disciples in the secret land. Although their strength was definitely not as strong as the divine generals of the Elysium, their strength would definitely not be weak if they were added together. After making these arrangements, Chu Xiu brought Xue Wuli to the mortal world. Xue Wuli himself didn't know that in such a short time, he had already crossed 2 worlds. The moment Xue Wuli appeared in the mortal world, a soul lamp in the Elysium flickered slightly, and then returned to its original state, without any change. Chapter 1181. With Xue Wuli, the traitor, acting as a spy, Chu Xiu could temporarily relax about the Elysium. At least, he didn't have to worry about the Elysium suddenly finding trouble with him. After returning to the Dayu Ocean, Chu Xiu continued to cultivate in seclusion. However, while he was cultivating, he also asked Su Fengshan if there were any major events in the Dayu Ocean recently. It turned out that there were. Yi Weikong had a fierce battle with Zhong Qiushui. To be precise, it wasn't a fierce battle. He was beaten up. In the end, Zhong Qiushui was seriously injured. However, for some reason, Yi Weikong retreated with the people of Cold River City. Chu Xiu could roughly guess that Zhong Qiushui must have used some trump card of the Imperial Sky Pavilion to threaten Yi Weikong to perish together with him. Thus, Yi Weikong was afraid and chose to retreat. Moreover, the entire Dayu Ocean was shocked by the rebellion of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Although the Dayu Ocean knew from the beginning that the 2 heroes of the Imperial Sky Pavilion had a falling out because of the position of Pavilion Master, they didn't expect the Imperial Sky Pavilion to be in such a state. Even the Pavilion Master had changed. If Li Wuxiang and Zhong Qiushui didn't fall out, the Imperial Sky Pavilion would have 2 martial immortals. They would have been able to recover part of the Imperial Sky Pavilion's prestige. However, a martial immortal had died in the sect's internal strife. Even the other sects felt it was a pity when they heard about it. Since there was nothing else for the time being, Chu Xiu entered seclusion again. This time he didn't want to make a breakthrough. He was preparing to accumulate power. As for the matter of condensing the domain, Chu Xiu wasn't in a hurry. Now, apart from the fact that he didn't have a domain, everything else was the same as the experts in the mysterious realm of heaven and earth. It could be said that he had both feet in this realm. Only one shoe was still outside. Therefore, there was no need to be in a hurry. When the time came, it would depend on the opportunity. Perhaps when Chu Xiu had the inspiration and accumulated enough, he would be able to step into this realm. During the time that Chu Xiu was in seclusion, Mei Qinglian and the others came out one after another. They had previously discussed that everyone would be in seclusion for between 3 months to half a year, and the longest period could not exceed half a year. Several people took turns to come out of seclusion. On the one hand, they could manage the affairs of Kangwu County and the entire southern barbaric land. On the other hand, they could go to the mortal world to see if there was anything that needed to be dealt with. After all, they could not ignore the Kunlun Mountain and the southern barbaric land in the mortal world. 8 months later, Lu Sanjin stood in front of the gates of Tsangnan Mansion. He felt that something was wrong. Compared to before, there were more warriors in Tsangnan Prefecture, and their strength was even stronger. But most of them were unfamiliar faces. At least Lu Sanjin had never seen them before. Could it be that these are the warriors that Brother Chu recruited when he was the prefectural governor? Lu Sanjin rubbed his nose. Kangwu County had been handed over to Chu Xiu, and the Imperial Sky Pavilion had not interfered. Had there been such a huge change? Should I go back and give Zhong Qiushui a suggestion to let the other counties try governing themselves? But then Lu Sanjin shook his head. The idea was good, but it was basically impossible. Not everyone was like Chu Xiu. If they were like Jiangzong, who had high standards but low ability, it would be easy to spoil things. Lu Sanjin stepped into the prefectural governor's mansion while thinking. Although the people in the prefectural governor's manor were mostly elites and trusted subordinates that Chu Xiu had brought from the lower realm, and they were the batch of people who had followed him from the very beginning, there were also some who were previously from the Imperial Sky Pavilion. They recognized Lu Sanjin and immediately welcomed him impolitely. At this time, the person in charge of Tsangnan Mansion was Mei Qinglian. She had just come out of seclusion a month ago. Seeing that Lu Sanjin had come, she arranged for someone to inform Chu Xiu to come out of seclusion, and came out to entertain Lu Sanjin. Looking at the gorgeous Mei Qinglian, Lu Sanjin secretly sized her up. He was very curious about the relationship between Mei Qinglian and Chu Xiu. Lovers? It didn't seem like it. But if they were just simple subordinates, the conversation between Chu Xiu and Mei Qinglian that he had seen during his last trip didn't seem like it either. Lu Sanjin rolled his eyes and chuckled. May I know how to address you, sister? Mei Qinglian. Mei Qinglian glanced at Lu Sanjin. She was a person who had seen countless people. Just from the look in Lu Sanjin's eyes, she knew that he was up to no good. Lu Sanjin clapped his hands and said, "The fragrance of plum blossoms comes from the bitter cold, and the pure lotus is not evil. Good name, good name." Mei Qinglian shook her head and said, "Wrong. My Qinglian is not the pure lotus." "Then what is it?" Mei Qinglian smiled charmingly and said, "It's the Qinglian of Qinglian." Lu Sanjin said with a dubious expression, "Who is Qinglian? Could it be Brother Chu? What do you think?" Lu Sanjin was about to speak, but he suddenly realized that Mei Qinglian's gentle eyes were burning with a layer of fire. In the next moment, Lu Sanjin's heart seemed to have been set ablaze as well. The burning sensation almost made him cry out. However, no matter how much he mobilized the spiritual qi and spiritual energy in his body, he could not find the source of the flame. Just then Chu Xiu's voice sounded. "All right, stop fooling around. Leave some face for our eastern region wayfarer." Seeing Chu Xiu walk over, Mei Qinglian snorted and retracted the karmic fire of the red lotus. She swayed her hips and walked out. There weren't many people who dared to flirt with her that were still alive. Seeing Lu Sanjin's slightly embarrassed appearance, Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Why did you provoke her? She is a flower with thorns. You can't touch her." The karmic fire of the red lotus, which was inherited from the red lotus demon venerable, was not easy to deal with. Lu Sanjin would not be able to defend himself if he wasn't careful. Of course, this did not mean that Lu Sanjin was weaker than Mei Qinglian. In fact, if it was a real life or death battle, Lu Sanjin could just ignore the burning of the karmic fire of the red lotus and finish off Mei Qinglian with his strength. Lu Sanjin grimaced in pain as he rubbed his chest and said, "Who provoked him? I'm just curious. Others can't touch him, but you?" Chu Xiu ignored his nonsense and asked, "Why are you looking for me? You wayfarer Lu, don't come to me for no reason. Is there something at the Imperial Sky Pavilion's headquarters?" Speaking of proper business, Lu Sanjin's expression also became solemn. "The Imperial Sky Pavilion is fine. I'm actually looking for you this time to ask for your help. In a month's time, the High Heaven Sect's founding ceremony will be held. At that time, disciples from the Eastern region and even other Daluotian sects, as well as some independent cultivators, will come to participate. Of course, those who will come will not be at the level of sect master or sect master. Instead, they will be the backbone of the various sects, such as Qi Wuhan from Cold River City. In the past, it was usually Pavilion Master Zhong who came. The cultivation he revealed earlier was that of a half-step martial immortal. He has the strength and qualifications to represent the Imperial Sky Pavilion. However, this matter can only fall on me now. I'm afraid I can't handle it alone." Chu Xiu rubbed his chin and pondered for a moment before saying, "Judging from what you're saying, there will be people stirring up trouble during the celebration." Lu Sanjin smiled bitterly and said, "Yes, there will definitely be people stirring up trouble. Apart from the rise of Cold River City, there are very few large-scale wars in the eastern region. However, there are many open and veiled struggles between the various sections. So every time something like this happens, It will be the time when the various sects in the eastern region fight the most. If I go alone, I won't be able to handle it with my small body. Hearing Lu Sanjin mention High Heaven sect, Chu Xiu was actually a little tempted. He didn't forget that Dugu Weiwei was in High Heaven sect. He didn't know if he could take advantage of this opportunity to enter High Heaven sect's sealed world. So Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Don't worry. Aside from the Imperial Sky Pavilion, you and I are friends. Of course, I won't refuse." Lu Sanjin clapped his hands and said, "I knew Brother Chu was a good friend." At this time, Chu Xiu asked, "By the way, since it's a celebration, we definitely have to bring gifts. Did High Heaven sect send any gifts in return or benefits?" Lu Sanjin didn't know how to respond to Chu Xiu's question. Why does Brother Chu care about these things? After thinking about it, Lu Sanjin shook his head and said, "I don't know. After all, it's my first time attending this celebration." Chu Xiu nodded and said, "Good. Wait for me to make some arrangements. I'll go to High Heaven sect with you." Kangwu County had been handed over to Mei Qinglian to manage, so there wasn't much to arrange. However, Lu Jianghe was bored in Kangwu County and also wanted to go. Chu Xiu didn't refuse. In any case, it was a celebration, and it was said that there would be open and secret struggles between the Eastern Territory's great sects. Bringing Lu Jianghe along would be an additional force. Moreover, Lu Fengxian also came out at this time. Previously, he had used his unparalleled secret art in the lower world, causing his physical body to be overloaded and suffering heavy injuries. At this time, after he had dealt with his physical injuries, Lu Fengxian's strength had also improved. Of course, it wasn't in terms of strength, but in terms of physical strength. It just so happened that Lu Fengxian had come out of seclusion, and he also wanted to see the other Daluotian sects, so he followed Chu Xiu. Seeing that Chu Xiu had brought Lu Fengxian and Lu Jianghe with him, Lu Sanjin breathed a sigh of relief. Last time, when he quelled the rebellion in Fenglin County, Lu Sanjin had seen Lu Jianghe and Lu Fengxian take action. Their strength was almost at the peak of the same realm. Even if Lu Sanjin fought against them, he wouldn't be confident he could win without using the trump cards given to him by Imperial Sky Pavilion. Now that these two were with him, if they encountered other sects looking for trouble, they would have a better chance. However, Lu Sanjin was also puzzled. He did not know where Chu Xiu had found so many outstanding figures among those of the same level. If these people under Chu Xiu were placed in Imperial Sky Pavilion, they would definitely be regarded as the mainstay of the sect. The group hurried along the way, and it took them more than 20 days to reach High Heaven City, where High Heaven sect was located. Lu Jianghe glanced at the magnificent High Heaven City and couldn't help saying to Lu Sanjin, "Advisor Lu, I hope you don't mind me speaking the truth, but High Heaven sect's sect is built much more majestic than Imperial Sky Pavilions." Lu Sanjin coldly snorted when he heard this and said, "Face is not a commodity, it depends on the content, understand?" Chapter 1182. Although Lu Sanjin disapproved of the grandeur of High Heaven City, in fact he also knew that as the #1 sect in the Eastern Territory, High Heaven sect was now stronger than his Imperial Sky Pavilion, whether it was in terms of face or character. Even in terms of character, Lu Sanjin couldn't compete. Therefore, Lu Sanjin dragged Chu Xiu and the others into the city as soon as possible, lest Lu Jianghe express his emotions. That would be a disgrace to Imperial Sky Pavilion. After all, Lu Jianghe also represented Imperial Sky Pavilion. However, the interior of High Heaven City was even more magnificent, causing Lu Jianghe to feel a little dazzled. At this moment, Lu Sanjin suddenly noticed something. He raised his hand and said, "Daoist brother Yinling Zi, have you returned from your Daluotian trip?" Not far away from Chu Xiu and the others, Yinling Zi, who was wearing a silver-white robe, stood there. A natural aura of Dao accumulation emanated from his body. Lu Jianghe was stunned when he saw this. He whispered, "This little Daoist is not simple." Yinling Zi came over and greeted. "So it's Brother Lu and Brother Chu. Who are these two?" Chu Xiu introduced, "This is Lu Fengxian, also the successor of Gu Zun and a good friend of mine. And that is Lu Jianghe, one of my subordinates." Lu Jianghe curled his lips, slightly dissatisfied. What right did Lu Fengxian have to be Gu Zun's successor, while he had to be her henchman? Although this was the truth, it wasn't pleasant to hear. In the lower world he could still say he was the hall master of the Blood Demon Hall, but in the Daluotian continent, he didn't dare talk nonsense. It was still good to be young. Someone like Lu Fengxian, whether in the lower world or the Daluotian continent, could be considered a young elite. Yin Lingzi greeted Lu Fengxian and Lu Jianghe with a warm smile. So it's Brother Lu and Uncle Lu. I mean Lingzi from Spirit Treasure Temple. Nice to meet you. Lu Fengxian returned the greeting, but Lu Jianghe's eyebrows were twitching. In such a short time he had become an uncle? At this time, Lu Sanjin was already chatting with Yin Lingzi. It turned out that Yin Spirit Z did not come to High Heaven Sect because his Daluotian tour had ended, but rather because Spirit Treasure Temple had specially sent Yin Spirit Z to congratulate High Heaven Sect on its founding celebration. Although the Spiritual Treasure Temple was a North Region Dao sect, they still had some friendly relations. Yin Lingzi had not returned to the East Region, so the Spiritual Treasure Temple sent him over. At this moment, a mocking voice suddenly rang out. The Imperial Sky Pavilion actually sent someone here. I thought you guys wouldn't come this time. Your own sect is already in a mess, yet you still have the mood to come to High Heaven City to participate in the celebration? Chu Xiu and the others looked back, and saw that the people who had come were the cultivators from Cold River City, led by Qi Wuhan. There was another person next to Qi Wuhan who looked to be in his 30s or 40s, and had a proud expression on his face. He was dressed in a green robe and had a green scabbard hanging from his waist. Seeing this person, Lu Jianghe couldn't help whispering, "Why isn't this guy wearing a green hat?" Bold. What did you say? The cultivator in green frowned and suddenly turned to look at Lu Jianghe. The surrounding world suddenly froze and a boundless sharpness crushed towards Lu Jianghe. This cultivator who seemed to be dressed strangely turned out to be a heaven and earth profound comprehension realm master. Lu Jianghe was taken aback, but at this time, Chu Xiu stepped forward and a world-extinguishing flame bloomed in front of him to offset the sharpness of this attack. Lu Sanjin snorted coldly and said, "Qi Wuhan, did your Cold River City come here to show off to us? If you really have the guts, why didn't you destroy my Imperial Sky Pavilion in the first place? What's the point of showing off here?" Qi Wuhan said indifferently, "Do you still feel proud that you weren't destroyed by my Cold River City? Since your Imperial Sky Pavilion wants to be destroyed so badly, don't worry. This day won't be too far away." Since Yi Weikong personally went to the Imperial Sky Pavilion to fight with Zhong Qiushui last time, both sides had basically turned against each other, so there was nothing to worry about at this time. Qi Wuhan looked at Chu Xiu again, shook his head and said indifferently, "Chu Xiu, your strength and talent are indeed powerful, but it's a pity that you chose the wrong person and took the wrong path. If you don't hurry up and go back to your master's side to cultivate, you may not be able to leave. Back then, my Cold River City also invited you to join us, but it's a pity that you refused. Now my Cold River City also has the help of a Gu Zun's descendant." As he spoke, Qi Wuhan pointed at the green-robed cultivator next to him and said, "This is Yu Wenfu, the disciple of Gu Zun's sword Venerable Ling Tian. I'm sure you all know the name of sword Venerable Ling Tian, right?" Lu Sanjin's expression became solemn, and so did Chu Xiu's. Of course he was pretending. Although he had some detailed information about the Daluotian, Gu Zun had always been mysterious. How could he know what kind of trash this sword Venerable Ling Tian was? Therefore he could only pretend to be solemn. Just when the two sides were confronting each other, and the atmosphere was extremely solemn, a majestic voice rang out coldly, "Both of you, this is not a place for you to settle your personal grudges. Can you give face to my Imperial Sky Pavilion and not fight here?" A dignified middle-aged man in a silver brocade robe walked over. The aura around him was solid and powerful. He was a master at the peak of the heaven and earth profound illumination realm. This man was an elder of High Heaven Sect. With High Heaven Sect intervening, they were not ungrateful people. They both coldly snorted and turned to leave. This time, High Heaven Sect's founding celebration attracted more people than the last martial show between High Heaven Sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion. After all, the last time was not a good thing. It was a place for the two sects to settle their personal grudges, so the atmosphere was a bit solemn. Although there were some open and veiled struggles among the major sects of the Eastern Territory this time, the atmosphere was better than last time. Lu Sanjin said with a worried look, I didn't expect Cold River City to pull in another Guzun's descendant, and it's Yuanfu. This is going to be a bit difficult. Is this Yuanfu difficult to deal with? Lu Jianghe asked. He still bore a grudge against the green-robed guy who attacked him just now. Both are Guzun's descendants. Brother Chu should know him very well, right? Lu Sanjin turned to look at Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu coughed and shook his head. I really don't know much about this. You also know that I spend most of my time cultivating, so I really don't care about the gossip of the world. Lu Sanjin sighed and said, Yuanfu has been in the world for several years, much earlier than you, Brother Chu. It's just that he spends most of his time in the Southern Territory. After all, the strongest sword Dao sect in the world, the World Sword Sect, is in the Southern Territory. The cultivators of sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage have always been strong and arrogant. Moreover, the sword Dao they cultivate is also extremely powerful. They always like to find masters to test their swords on. Over the years, the number of swordsmen in the Southern Territory who have been defeated by him is not small. It is said that Xinghe Lu's cultivator Meng Xinghe has a very high reputation among the Guzun. Many of the Guzun's descendants will give Xinghe Lu's cultivator face, so it's not surprising that Cold River City could invite Yuanfu to come here. Chu Xiu said lightly, Don't worry. In any case, the Imperial Sky Pavilion is already in such a state. There's no difference whether Yuanfu is added or lost. Lu Sanjin looked at Chu Xiu with a strange look. Although Chu Xiu's tone was comforting, why did Lu Sanjin hear the underlying meaning behind his words? The group stayed in the place arranged by High Heaven Sect for 5 days. In order to avoid trouble, they did not go out during these 5 days. It was not until 5 days later that High Heaven Sect's founding ceremony officially began. The place where the founding ceremony was held was the same as the place where High Heaven Sect and Imperial Sky Pavilion participated in the martial arts show last time, but there was a circle of seats around the terrace. For this founding ceremony, the 3 great martial immortals of High Heaven Sect had already appeared. In addition to the previous sect master Qin Baiyuan and the battle god monarch, Linghu Immortal Mountain, who was responsible for guarding High Heaven Sect, there was also the current sect master of High Heaven Sect, 9 Dragons Divine Monarch Fang Yinglong. From his appearance, Fang Yinglong looked like an elegant middle-aged man, like a teacher. Of course, this was to ignore his silver robe embroidered with 9 coiling dragons. Chu Xiu had studied Fang Yinglong's information. This person was definitely a ruthless person. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was the strongest person in the Eastern Territory. Yi Weikong's strength had only reached the 7th heavenly layer of Martial Immortal Realm, but Fang Yinglong was a master in the 8th heavenly layer of Martial Immortal Realm. As long as Fang Yinglong was still alive, High Heaven Sect could maintain its current status. As soon as the founding ceremony began, the forces of the Western Territory, Southern Territory, and Northern Territory had to send congratulatory gifts even if they did not come. Sects like the Imperial Sky Pavilion and the Cold River City, which had some conflicts with High Heaven Sect, also had to come and watch the ceremony. Glancing at Lu Sanjin, Chu Xiu shook his head slightly. The Imperial Sky Pavilion was indeed in a dangerous situation now. High Heaven Sect had the strength. Qin Baiyuan was old, but Linghu Immortal Mountain and Fang Yinglong were still in their prime. They had not reached the stage where their vitality had declined. They could protect High Heaven Sect for another generation, until the next successor was cultivated. The Cold River City had a master like Yi Weikong. Because of its small territory, it had a strong style and dared to fight. Its disciples were not weak either. In the Imperial Heaven Pavilion, Zhong Qiushui was the only one they could send out now. Putting aside Lu Sanjin and Chu Xiu, the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's managing elders and prefectural governors almost did not have any powerhouses they could send out. They were completely relying on their past foundation to hold on. If this went on, even the slightest accident in the Imperial Sky Pavilion could easily lead to the collapse of the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion. While Chu Xiu was letting his imagination run wild, The High Heaven sect's founding celebration had already begun. In fact, there was nothing too new. After so many years, there had already been a set of procedures. It was nothing more than Fong Yinglong, as the sect master, standing up and saying a few words, paying respects to the ancestors, and carrying out a complicated worship ceremony. An hour passed, and then a group of singers and dancers came up to perform. After that, the dishes were served. By the time this was done, it was already evening. Lu Jianghe and Lu Sanjin had a lot of topics to talk about, commenting on the appearance of the dancers, etc., but Chu Xiu was not in the mood for that. When everyone had almost finished eating, Qin Baiyuan smiled and said, "Today so many talents from various sects have arrived. My High Heaven sect didn't have much to prepare, so why don't we stick to the old rules and have a martial Dao gambling fight? Whether you win or lose, my High Heaven sect has prepared a congratulatory gift for all participating cultivators. I guarantee that you will not suffer a loss." Chapter 1183. Lu Sanjin had told Chu Xiu about High Heaven sect's martial arts gambling fight before coming here. It was nothing more than a dispute between the various great sects, so they had to find a less intense and reasonable place to resolve it. To put it bluntly, it was a place for the major sects to show off their strength. Of course, since it was a duel, one could choose not to participate, but it would tarnish their reputation. Chu Xiu was dragged along by Lu Sanjin mainly to deal with this situation and prevent the Imperial Sky Pavilion from losing too badly. Qin Baiyuan clapped his hands. Immediately, someone carried a large pile of items up and opened them one by one. In an instant, the place was filled with jewels and treasures. As the #1 sect in the eastern region, the High Heaven sect was quite particular when it came to doing things. The value of these treasures was not low. As long as one participated in the martial arts duel, one would be able to get one regardless of the outcome. Qin Baiyuan clapped his hands and said with a smile, "Everyone here is the most outstanding talent in the eastern region, and even the Daoyu Ocean. Anyone who wants to go up and learn from each other can come up and have a try. Of course, a small gamble is good for the mood, but a large gamble is harmful. A martial arts wager is also a wager. It's fine if you don't overdo it. Don't get serious and hurt the harmony. That wouldn't be good." On the Cold River City's side, Qi Wuhan suddenly smiled. He stood up and said, "My Cold River City would like to fight with the Imperial Sky Pavilion. I wonder if anyone from the Imperial Sky Pavilion dares to come up?" Upon hearing Qi Wuhan's words, everyone present had different expressions. They had long heard about the fallout between Cold River City and the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Now, it could be said that both sides were only one step away from exterminating each other. Cold River City had no confidence to fight, and the Imperial Sky Pavilion dared not make the first move. Therefore, it was normal for Qi Wuhan to step up and challenge the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Qi Wuhan was not too old, and the martial arts duel was not that strict. As long as one was not a martial immortal of the older generation, one could participate. However, the crowd looked at the Imperial Sky Pavilion with a hint of sympathy. After all, in their opinion, there was no one from the Imperial Sky Pavilion who was in the profound illumination realm. Although Chu Xiu had once forced Qi Wuhan to retreat, that matter was only known by the people of Cold River City and the Royal Sky Pavilion. Both sides did not spread the news, so most people really did not know Chu Xiu's actual strength. Before the Imperial Sky Pavilion could answer, Yuan Fu sitting next to Qi Wuhan said lightly, "Chu Xiu, I heard that you're also the successor of the ancient venerable? You hide and dare not reveal who your master is. Ridiculous. I heard that you've killed ethereal enlightenment cultivators before. Let's exchange a few blows. I'd like to see just how strong you, the prime sovereign's successor, are." The successor of Sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage, Yuan Fu, was very famous. When everyone present heard this, their eyes immediately revealed an expression as if they were watching a good show. At this time on the High Heaven sect side, Xianyuan Wushuang suddenly stood up and said coldly, "I also want to challenge Chu Xiu again." Xianyuan Wushuang said coldly, "I also want to challenge Chu Xiu again." The last time he had lost, it was simply inexplicable. He did not know why the fighting soul he had summoned had suddenly lost its effect, and had even started to bite back. He was defeated by Chu Xiu in an inexplicable way. He didn't know why the fighting soul he summoned suddenly lost its effect, and even started to attack him. Therefore, when he saw Chu Xiu coming, he couldn't help but take the initiative to challenge Chu Xiu. Qin Baiyuan frowned and said, "Wu Shuang, don't make trouble." The High Heaven sect would usually not participate in the martial arts duel after the founding ceremony. They were only the organizers. After all, there was no reason for them to win their own things. Moreover, this was their home ground, so they had the most people. If they all participated in the duel, it would seem that they were bullying others. Xianyuan Wushuang shook his head stubbornly and said, "Old sect master, the rules don't say that the High Heaven sect can't participate in the duel, right? I'll participate in the duel, but I don't want the prize." As soon as Xianyuan Wushuang finished speaking, someone in the field laughed and said, "So many people want to challenge the Imperial Sky Pavilion? It's very lively. Why don't we join next? I also admire the experts of the Imperial Sky Pavilion." The person who stood up was a cultivator in a blood-red robe, who looked to be in his 30s or 40s. He looked feminine and strange. Everyone present was shocked to see this scene. Who did the Imperial Sky Pavilion offend? Why was everyone targeting the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Lu Jiang he raised his eyebrows and said, "Who is this guy? The Imperial Sky Pavilion has offended a lot of people." Lu Sanjin corrected him. "It's the Imperial Sky Pavilion, not the Imperial Sky Pavilion. We're on the same side now." Then Lu Sanjin looked at the man in the blood-red robe and snorted coldly. "This guy is Yin Shueli, the sect master of the Eastern Region Blood River sect, the disciple of the Blood River Ancestor. The Blood River Ancestor isn't a martial immortal, but he's a half-step martial immortal. Hence, the Blood River sect is a sect that's second only to the top sects in the Eastern region. I heard that the Blood River Ancestor went to find trouble with the Cold River City in the past. In the end, he was subdued by Yi Weikong. From then on, the Cold River City ruled over him. He's very spineless. Since Yin Shueli has the guts to jump out and find trouble with the Imperial Sky Pavilion, he must have been instructed by the people of the Cold River City. Damn it. This guy is extremely daring. He doesn't dare to offend the Cold River City, but he dares to offend the Imperial Sky Pavilion? Usually in a martial arts duel, everyone would fight against each other. While showing off their prowess, they could also earn some good luck. However, this time around, before the others said anything, most people targeted the Imperial Sky Pavilion. This caused the atmosphere in the field to become heavy. Lu Sanjin turned his gaze to Chu Xiu. He wanted to ask Chu Xiu what they should do now. If it was only the Cold River City, they could still take on the challenge. However, now that the other guys were involved, how could they fight? However, before Lu Sanjin could speak, Chu Xiu suddenly stood up and said, "Everyone wants to challenge the Imperial Sky Pavilion? It seems like the Imperial Sky Pavilion is very popular. Sure, I'll accept all the challenges." When Chu Xiu said that, the others were stunned. There were 3 mystic illuminating realm cultivators in addition to Xianyuan Wushuang, who was not inferior to the mystic illuminating realm cultivators, and whose name had spread throughout the Daluotian world. Was this Chu Xiu crazy? Lu Sanjin also looked at Chu Xiu in shock. Although he had invited Chu Xiu over to be a hired thug, "Big brother, could you not be so headstrong? How were they supposed to fight?" After a pause, Chu Xiu continued. "However, the Imperial Sky Pavilion has accepted the challenges of so many people. I wonder if High Heaven City dares to add to the wager?" Qin Baiyuan frowned and looked at Chu Xiu saying, "What do you want to add?" Because of the last fight between Xianyuan Wushuang and Chu Xiu, Qin Baiyuan did not have a good impression of Chu Xiu. Although it was Xianyuan Wushuang who disobeyed the rules and used a killing move in the martial arts show, Xianyuan Wushuang was still a disciple of High Heaven sect. If he still liked Chu Xiu, he would really be a saint. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, "It's very simple. I heard that the spiritual cloud realm of the High Heaven sect is rich in heaven and earth yuan qi. If we win, I want to use the spiritual cloud realm to cultivate for a few days. Is that possible?" The others present did not feel anything wrong. For a top sect like the High Heaven sect, there must be a lot of blessed caves in the sect. The most important blessed cave of the High Heaven sect should be the High Heaven sect's ancestral land, the scripture pavilion of the High Heaven sect, and the place where all kinds of trump cards were stored. It was the most important place, so it was personally guarded by a powerhouse like Linghu Immortal Mountain. They had heard of the spiritual cloud realm. It should be one of the more important blessed caves of the High Heaven sect, but it was appropriate to use it as a wager. However, Qin Baiyuan frowned slightly. He did not expect that Chu Xiu would make such a request. In fact, it was not a big deal to let Chu Xiu enter the blessed cave to cultivate, but Qin Baiyuan did not forget what the ancestors of the High Heaven sect had told him in the past. Qin Baiyuan was far younger than the old pavilion master. He was just close to 400 years old, and he was not even born in the battle 500 years ago. But when the previous pavilion master told him, he had already said that there was an extremely terrible existence imprisoned in the spiritual cloud realm, so he must be very careful. Was it inappropriate to let an outsider enter the spiritual cloud realm? However, before Qin Baiyuan could speak, Xianyuan Wushuang snorted coldly and said, "You want to enter the spiritual cloud realm to cultivate? Sure, but you have to win this round. Otherwise, not only can you not enter the spiritual cloud realm, but you will also lose the wager you deserve." Chu Xiu stood with his hands clasped behind his back and said lightly, "Don't worry, I can afford to lose." Seeing that Xianyuan Wushuang had agreed first, Qin Baiyuan could only frown and shake his head gently. He said in a low voice, "Chu Xiu, since you have promised this battle, don't regret it. Since you are representing the Imperial Sky Pavilion, you have to win all 4 battles. If you lose one, your Imperial Sky Pavilion will lose all. Don't say that the High Heaven sect took this opportunity to bully you." After all, Xianyuan Wushuang was a member of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Since he had promised, if Qin Baiyuan went back on his word in front of so many people, it would be a little stingy. However, Qin Baiyuan was not too nervous, because the spiritual cloud realm had already been opened when he was the pavilion master. The spiritual cloud realm was very large, and the place where the terrifying existence was sealed was only in the deepest part of the spiritual cloud realm. As long as the formation in the deepest part was not destroyed, everything would be fine. It was such a big paradise, but it had always been kept in a sealed state. That was a waste. Qin Baiyuan had not been involved in the battle 500 years ago, so he had not seen the strength of the terrifying existence with his own eyes. Therefore, he had already tried to open the spiritual cloud realm blessed abode, and send some disciples in to cultivate, but he had warned them not to get close to the formation. For so many years, the High Heaven sect had sent many disciples in, but nothing had happened. Therefore, in the entire High Heaven sect, except for Qin Baiyuan, the old sect master, no one took this matter seriously. Only he still remembered some of the warnings of the former sect master. Now, as an outsider, Chu Xiu was sent in, and all he needed to do was to keep an eye on him and keep him away from the formation. Moreover, the battle had not ended yet. Qin Baiyuan did not believe that the Imperial Sky Pavilion could win this round with so few people. Chapter 1184. Seeing that Qin Baiyuan had agreed so easily, Chu Xiu was taken aback. After all, the Divine Cloud Realm was the place where Dugu Weiwei was sealed. He thought that Qin Baiyuan would try his best to evade. Chu Xiu had even prepared some provocative words, but he did not expect Qin Baiyuan to agree. However, after thinking about it carefully, Chu Xiu could roughly guess what was going on. What was the strongest power in this world? It was not the domain divine ability, nor was it the law of heaven and earth. It was time. No matter how strong a power was, it would be diluted by time. In the past, the old pavilion master was even unwilling to recall that battle, because he had seen it with his own eyes. The fear of Dugu Weiwei had always been imprinted in his heart. Now no one in High Heaven sect, including the old sect master Qin Baiyuan, had experienced that battle, so they had no way of imagining it. As such, their attitude towards Dugu Weiwei was still quite serious, but not to the point of fear like the old pavilion master. Seeing that the matter had been settled, Lu Sanjin gritted his teeth and stood up as well. Lu Sanjin was not an irresponsible person. This time, he was the one who asked Chu Xiu to come. Now that Chu Xiu had stood up, how could he object? Moreover, this time, these people led by Cold River City were obviously targeting the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Even if they managed to avoid it this time, there would be a next time. Chu Xiu said to Lu Jianghe and Lu Fengxian, I will deal with the successor of Sword Venerable Ling Tian. As for the rest, you can pick one. When everyone present saw Chu Xiu's attitude, they could not help but shake their heads. Was this Chu Xiu really arrogant, or was he fearless because he was ignorant? Did he want to challenge Yin Shuili and Xianyuan Wushuang with just two nameless people? Lu Jianghe stretched his neck and said, Leave that Blood River sect guy to me. Lu Fengxian nodded and said, Then leave the rest to me. Xianyuan Wushuang frowned and said, Who wants to fight with a nameless person like you? I want to fight with Chu Xiu again. Chu Xiu glanced at Yuan Fu and said lightly, This one wants to fight with me, and that one also wants to fight with me. Do you think I can split myself into two? Why don't the two of you fight first and decide the winner before you fight me? Yuan Fu and Xianyuan Wushuang snorted at the same time. They were not idiots. How could they do such a stupid thing just to compete for opponents? Yuan Fu laughed and said, Young Master Xianyuan, don't worry. You've already fought with Chu Xiu last time, so this time it's my turn. Don't worry, I'll definitely make him lose miserably and help you vent your anger. Between Yuan Fu and Xianyuan Wushuang, one was conceited, while the other was proud. On other occasions, Xianyuan Wushuang might not give in to Yuan Fu. However, this was High Heaven Sect, and Xianyuan Wushuang was a member of High Heaven Sect. He had to save some face for High Heaven Sect, so he could not compete with Yuan Fu. Chu Xiu glanced at Lu Sanjin and said, Are you sure you can deal with Qi Wuhan? Lu Sanjin shook his head and said in a low voice, Of course not, but I have to fight with him. This time they are targeting Emperor Heaven Pavilion. Brother Chu, you have stopped so many people, so of course you have to leave Qi Wuhan to me. This is Emperor Heaven Pavilion's own business. Strictly speaking, Chu Xiu and the others were not members of Emperor Heaven Pavilion. However, these outsiders were willing to fight with the identity of Emperor Heaven Pavilion. As the East Territory traveler of Emperor Heaven Pavilion, how could he shrink back? Xianyuan Wushuang was the first to lose his temper. He stood out with halberd in his hand and pointed at Lu Fengxian, saying, Boy, don't waste time. Come out first and finish this round quickly. Chu Xiu, if you are not injured by Yuan Fu, let's fight again. His target had always been Chu Xiu. Even if Yuan Fu defeated Chu Xiu, he would not be avenging Xianyuan Wushuang. Xianyuan Wushuang could only avenge himself. Lu Fengxian had a good temper. At least he would not be angry with Xianyuan Wushuang because of his arrogant attitude. Hearing this, he also left his seat, took out his halberd, cupped his fists and said to Xianyuan Wushuang, I'm Lu. I'm not interested in knowing your name. Xianyuan Wushuang directly waved his hand and interrupted Lu Fengxian, saying coldly, There are so many weak people in this world. If I remember their names one by one, won't I die of exhaustion? You only need to know that you have fought with me. Xianyuan Wushuang. That's enough. You're actually using a heavenly halberd? That's even better. Today, I'll teach you what the real halberd is like and what kind of person deserves to use halberd. Hearing this, the corners of the mouths of the people present twitched. They had long heard that Xianyuan Wushuang, the genius disciple of High Heaven Sect, was a little abnormal. Now it seemed that he was not abnormal at all. He was simply arrogant. Although they did not think that an unknown guy could defeat Xianyuan Wushuang's attitude made them speechless. However, Lu Fengxian's self-restraint left a good impression on the audience. If it were them, they would have already scolded Xianyuan Wushuang after hearing his words. However, Lu Fengxian still said with a gentle smile on his face, Really? Then I'd like to learn from you. Unfortunately, you won't be able to learn more than a few moves from me. Xianyuan Wushuang clenched the High Heaven Dragon Suppression halberd in his hand, and the golden light of Gang Qi soared into the sky. In an instant, the roar of a dragon suddenly sounded. The powerful Gang Qi fluctuations almost overflowed the terrace, which made the faces of the people present change. It was said that Xianyuan Wushuang's strength was amazing. Today they finally witnessed it. What was the difference between such a powerful force and an expert in the profound enlightenment realm. They could not help but feel a little sympathy for Lu Fengxian. Before they could sympathize with him for long, strands of powerful demon qi had already attached to Lu Fengxian's body. Demon clouds soared into the sky and even caused the weather to change. In an instant, the whole stand was covered with dark clouds. An incomparably ferocious aura emanated from the unparalleled heavenly halberd, even causing Lu Fengxian's eyes to emit a violent scarlet light. In terms of momentum alone, Lu Fengxian was not much inferior to Xianyuan Wushuang. Looking at Lu Fengxian in front of him, Xianyuan Wushuang slightly raised his eyebrows and said, "You have some ability. No wonder you dare to stand out and challenge me. Unfortunately, it's still useless." As Xianyuan Wushuang's voice fell, he directly smashed down with halberd Wushuang in his hand. The dazzling golden gang qi turned into 9 dragons coiling behind him, and strengthened the power of his halberd. In an instant, as if the sky was falling and the earth was sinking, the powerful wave of power even shook the whole space and made a loud sonic boom. Xianyuan Wushuang had made some progress in the last battle with Chu Xiu. The only thing he learned was that even a lion should use all its strength to fight a rabbit. No matter how much he looked down on a person, he should not underestimate his opponent. So this time, he also used all his strength. 9 Heavens Fiend golden body had been activated to the extreme by Lu Fengxian, and there was even a huge shadow of a demon looming behind him. Unparalleled magic weapon fell against Xianyuan Wushuang's high heaven dragon subduing halberd. When the two halberds collided, the golden gang qi and the pitch-black devil qi suddenly burst out. With a loud bang, they condensed into a huge gang qi storm, and began to spread in all directions. On the high platform of the martial arts practice field, the surrounding formations had been activated in an instant, digesting the huge power fluctuations caused by the fight between the two. The booming sounds of explosions kept coming. The moment the two people collided, Xianyuan Wushuang's expression changed. Power, powerful power. The power that erupted from LV Fengxian's body was too strong. It was so strong that even he couldn't withstand it. Moreover, it was not the power of gang qi, but the pure power of the body. It was simply invincible. At this time, Lu Fengxian's exposed skin was even plated with a layer of black and red demonic pattern, which was a sign that the 9 Heavens Fiend golden body had been cultivated to the extreme. During this period of time, Chu Xiu had a better understanding of this cultivation method than Lu Fengxian, because he often fought with others. But now it seemed that Lu Fengxian, who specialized in this cultivation method, had surpassed Chu Xiu in this aspect. Xianyuan Wushuang could no longer withstand this powerful physical power, so he had to choose to withdraw. But the next moment, the unparalleled halberd in Lu Fengxian's hand followed closely behind and directly smashed over. The violent momentum stirred like a turbulent current, instantly condensing the surrounding gang qi into a storm. When the unparalleled demon halberd was displayed, the halberd skill was simply magnificent to the extreme, and it was also mixed with violent fighting intent. The long halberd smashed down one after another, and each strike was extremely powerful. This halberd skill was originally a manifestation of the extremely powerful physical power to the extreme. There was no need to waste time mobilizing genuine qi, or think about any martial arts technique. It was just a simple bombardment of power, until the opponent had no strength to fight back. At this time, Xianyuan Wushuang felt this way. He only chose to take a step back, but he fell into the opponent's series of violent attacks. He had never seen such a fighting method, so he was directly stunned by the series of attacks. "Get out of my way!" Xianyuan Wushuang roared. The 9 dragons on the high heaven dragon subduing halberd merged into one, and the power broke out to the extreme. But once Lu Fengxian entered this state, the violent fighting intent even affected his own will a little. The demonic tattoos on his body became brighter and brighter, which made Chu Xiu's expression change. Is Lu Fengxian going to use that move? Fortunately, Lu Fengxian was still rational. Before the demonic tattoos on his body broke out to the extreme, his halberd had already fallen. Qin Baiyuan's expression changed. He reached out to stop it, but it was too late. The speed of this pure physical power was too fast, so fast that even an expert in the martial immortal realm could not stop it. The powerful power condensed on the unparalleled halberd, and the extreme physical power exploded in an instant. The high heaven dragon subduing halberd was directly knocked away, and the crescent blades on the halberd cracked. Xianyuan Wushuang was also sent flying out of the arena by Lu Fengxian's attack. He hit the formation and spat out a mouthful of blood. Chapter 1185. Xianyuan Wushuang was defeated miserably. Only the sound of Lv Fengxian's heavy breathing could be heard. The demonic tattoos on his body slowly began to dissipate, but it was not like last time, where his body was on the verge of collapse. After all, this time he was only borrowing Wushuang's power. In Chu Xiu's view, Xianyuan Wushuang was miserable. It was undeniable that Xianyuan Wushuang was indeed a genius, who had forcibly turned a useless person's physique into a peerless genius's. However, he was really unlucky. Compared with Lu Fengxian, who had unparalleled luck, there was simply no comparison between them. Last time he met Chu Xiu, he had to summon the Marquis Lu Wenho's fighting soul. As a result, he was restrained by Chu Xiu and almost lost his strength. This time he was truly unlucky. Although he had used his full strength right from the start, he had encountered Lv Fengxian, who had just erupted and her strength had soared by a large margin. Thus, he was directly suppressed to death and didn't even have the chance to retaliate. In terms of realm, Xianyuan Wushuang was actually stronger than Lu Fengxian. After all, he had reached the peak of the true fire spirit refinement realm. Unfortunately, in the previous battle against Sabodhi Monastery, Lv Fengxian had used her absolute physical strength to slay the Adumbara Brahma. Even Chu Xiu had been shocked by that kind of strength. It could be said to be the limit of physical strength. This time, although Lu Fengxian did not use the full version of Wushuang, he only borrowed a part of it, which was enough for Xianyuan Wushuang to suffer. However, Xianyuan Wushuang had some foundation. Even if he was beaten by Lu Fengxian and vomited blood, he still struggled to get up, unwilling to give up, and wanted to continue to fight. He still had a few trump cards and secret skills of High Heaven Sect that he had not used yet. At this time, Qin Baiyuan shouted in a low voice, "Enough! Isn't it shameful enough? A loss is a loss. My High Heaven Sect can afford to lose. Yet you still want to pester us? Are you prepared to lose face for yourself or High Heaven Sect?" Xianyuan Wushuang glared at Lu Fengxian, but he had to step back after hearing Qin Baiyuan, who had always been protective of him, said so. However, his eyes were still flickering with unwillingness. He was sullen. Last time when he fought with Chu Xiu, he lost inexplicably. This time it was the same with Lu Fengxian. Lu Fengxian was simply a monster. Her series of attacks did not even give him a chance to fight back. She defeated him with absolute strength. At this time, Qin Baiyuan looked at Lu Fengxian and said in a deep voice, "Young man, not bad. What a strong physical body. I wonder which successor you are?" Everyone turned to look at Lu Fengxian. Regardless of whether Lu Fengxian was a nobody or not, he would be famous in the East Territory from now on based on the fact that he defeated Xianyuan Wushuang so easily. Lu Fengxian cupped his hands and said, "I'm also the successor of Gu Zun. My bloodline inherited the cultivation method of the ancient demon god Marquis Lu Wenho." Hearing Lv Fengxian's words, everyone present gasped softly, and their faces were filled with surprise. Marquis Lu Wenho was very famous even in the Daoyuotian world. After all, he had once fought against the whole Jianghu with his own strength. Lu Fengxian turned out to be the successor of this bloodline. No wonder his physical strength was so strong and his attainments in halberd were so high. At the thought of this, everyone subconsciously looked at Xianyuan Wushuang. That was a painful slap to the face. Previously, Xianyuan Wushuang said to Lu Fengxian that he wanted to teach him the true halberd. Who would have thought that his master was from the bloodline of Marquis Lu Wenho? Who would dare to compare with Marquis Lu Wenho when it came to halberd? Lu Jianghe walked out and stretched his limbs. He pointed at Yin Xueli and said, Come. That guy who doesn't look like a good person, it's our turn." Yin Xueli laughed coldly and said, "You're courting death." Everyone present had a strange expression. Where did the Imperial Sky Pavilion find such a weirdo? Lu Jianghe even said that Yin Xueli didn't look like a good person. In fact, his appearance was very upright. but because of the cultivation method, his temperament was slightly more feminine. As for Lu Jianghe, he used to be a bandit and a pirate. Later on, he became the hallmaster of the Kunlun devil cult twice. He was the one who really didn't look like a good person. Regarding this battle, they still believed that Yin Xueli would win. It should be said that Yin Xueli had a 100% chance of winning. Yin Xueli had reached the heaven and earth mystic illumination realm not long ago. And the guy from the Imperial Sky Pavilion was only at the true fire spirit refinement realm. Previously, when Lu Fengxian fought with Xianyuan Wushuang, it could be said that they were at the same level. However, this time it was a standard battle between those who were at a higher level. Speaking of which, it was a little like bullying. However, Chu Xiu wasn't worried because he knew that Lu Jianghe should know what to do. This guy might look rough, but in fact he was very sneaky. He wouldn't do things that required his life, and he wouldn't do things that he wasn't confident in. Seeing how he agreed so quickly, Chu Xiu knew that Lu Jianghe should be confident. Indeed, when Lu Jianghe and Yin Xueli started fighting, everyone realized that Lu Jianghe's cultivation technique was extremely similar to Yin Xueli's. Both of them used cultivation techniques that manipulated the power of blood to battle. However, Yin Xueli's cultivation technique leaned towards the evil and tyrannical path, which was a standard demonic technique. While Lu Jianghe's blood divine demonic technique had the same attributes, it had a hint of mysticism. Yin Xueli's blood-colored domain opened up and enveloped Lu Jianghe within it. Then he started to suppress and beat him up. Using the heaven and earth mystic illumination realm to fight against the true fire spirit refinement realm, the effect of the domain was the most obvious. Once the domain was opened, one would be almost invincible. After all, not everyone was like Chu Xiu, who had the formation-breaking technique, and could easily shatter the domain. Yin Xueli sneered and said, "You dare to clamor with me with such little strength? You're simply courting death. Seeing that your cultivation technique is actually similar to my blood river cult's, you're just showing off after learning a little bit. What a joke." Lu Jianghe said disdainfully, "Little bit? When it comes to controlling the power of vitality, I'm your ancestor. You'll know in a while who's the real little bit." After fighting for such a long time, Lu Jianghe had more or less figured out Yin Xueli's martial arts path. Although this blood river cult's martial arts looked similar to his, it was not the same as the blood divine demonic technique. Stubborn. Yin Xueli snorted coldly. The domain around him began to shrink rapidly, and finally turned into a 1,000-foot-long blood river, which directly enveloped Lu Jianghe. In the blood river, endless blood threads bound Lu Jianghe's entire body, and began to devour his vitality crazily. In an instant, Lu Jianghe's entire body shrunk by a large margin. This was no longer a spar, but a battle to the death. However, High Heaven Sect did not say a word. Because of the previous conflict, Qin Baiyuan and the others were not very pleased with Chu Xiu and the others. Moreover, Imperial Sky Pavilion had not said anything yet, so what were they so anxious about? Right now Lu Sanjin was actually very anxious. Although he felt that Chu Xiu's subordinate had a foul mouth and liked to spout nonsense when he had nothing better to do, he was representing the Imperial Sky Pavilion after all. He could not just watch Lu Jianghe die here. However, before Lu Sanjin could call for a pause, Chu Xiu pressed his hand down and said indifferently, "Calm down. Old Lu won't be defeated so easily. Let's just watch." Lu Sanjin had a face of suspicion. At this moment, Lu Jianghe was about to be sucked dry, but Chu Xiu still said that he had not lost. Did he have to wait until Lu Jianghe was dead before he lost? At this moment, Lu Jianghe was indeed in a miserable state. Almost all of his vitality had been sucked away by Yin Xueli. All that was left of his body was skin and bones, just like a mummy. Yin Xueli sneered and said, "I didn't expect you to have such a rich vitality even though you have yet to reach the heaven and earth mystic opening realm. Not bad, not bad. No wonder you could block so many of my moves. However, you made a mistake by provoking me. Today is High Heaven Sect's celebration, and it is not a good time to kill someone. For the sake of High Heaven Sect, I will spare your life." At this moment, Lu Jianghe said with a strange smile, "Idiot, do you really think this lord's vitality is so easy to swallow?" As Lu Jianghe's voice fell, Yin Shueli suddenly let out a miserable howl, and his face began to distort. Hot, scorching hot. The vitality in his body began to boil, and his entire body began to boil intensely from the inside out. In the eyes of others, Yin Shueli was extremely strange. The skin all over his body began to writhe and move as though he was a living creature. At this moment, even if Yin Shueli had the cultivation of the heaven and earth mystic opening realm, it was useless. He could not even use a trace of his cultivation. The warriors of the Church of Blood River controlled the power of vitality, and they could also devour the vitality of others and refine it into their own power. Hence, not long after Ancestor Blood River rose, he had already reached the realm of a half-step martial immortal. Although Yin Shueli's talent was not considered weak, it was at least inferior to Xianyuan Wushuang and Lu Sanjin. However, by relying on the warriors of the Church of Blood River, he had stepped into the heaven and earth mystic opening realm earlier than them. To others, the cultivation technique of the Church of Blood River was incomparably evil. However, to Lu Jianghe, it was extremely crude. One had to know that his blood demon divine technique could mobilize the power of every drop of blood. Every drop of blood was a clone of Lu Jianghe. As long as Lu Jianghe's true spirit was still present, he could be revived with just a drop of blood. This level of miraculousness was far from what the cultivation technique of the Church of Blood River could compare to. If Lu Jianghe were to fight against ordinary Tao, Buddhist, or sword-sex ethereal enlightenment realm martial artists, he might not be killed, but he would definitely be beaten up. However, against Yin Shueli, Lu Jianghe could completely suppress him across realms. Seeing that Yin Shueli's body was about to explode, Lu Jianghe curled his lips and retracted his power of vitality. He knew what kind of situation they were in. If he were to kill someone, High Heaven Sect would definitely intervene. In an instant, the fresh blood flowed back into Lu Jianghe's body. It even brought along a large portion of Yin Shueli's vitality, allowing him to instantly return to his original state. His aura even strengthened quite a bit. Looking at Yin Shueli, who was lying on the ground like a dried corpse, breathing in but not exhaling, Lu Jianghe licked his lips and laughed. The vitality of an expert of the heaven and earth mystic opening realm is indeed rich. I am very satisfied. Looking around, Lu Jianghe met everyone's surprised gaze and raised his head proudly. Remember, I am not a nobody. I am the blood demon venerable, Lu Jianghe. Chapter 1186. Chu Xiu did not let Lu Jianghe show off on stage for too long and pulled him down. As for Lu Jianghe's victory, Chu Xiu did not find it strange at all. After all, he had also cultivated the blood demon power technique. He could almost see the crudeness and flaws of Xue Wuli's technique at a glance. Of course, Lu Jianghe had nothing to be proud of. The blood demon technique was powerful not only because of Lu Jianghe's efforts, but also because of Dugu Weiwei's efforts. Back in the Kunlun devil cult, Dugu Weiwei had helped his subordinates perfect their techniques. Although the blood demon technique was Lu Jianghe's original creation, Dugu Weiwei's guidance and help in perfecting the technique were definitely indispensable. At Dugu Weiwei's level, he might only need to say a word to make the blood demon technique's strength surpass the blood river cult's technique. Qi Wuhan's face darkened as he ordered people to carry Yin Shueli, who was lying on the ground and almost drained of all his blood, away. Originally, he thought that Yin Shueli's attack would be a sure win. Who would have thought that Yin Shueli was so useless that he was beaten half to death by a true fire spirit refinement realm warrior? Moreover, this matter was troublesome. He was the one who instigated Yin Shueli to find trouble with the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Now that Yin Shueli was almost crippled, his protective master, Blood River Patriarch, would definitely come to find trouble with him. Although Qi Wuhan was not afraid, he did not want to get involved in such a matter. After all, the Blood River cult was on the side of Cold River City. After 2 consecutive victories, everyone looked at Chu Xiu in a different light. They did not know who Lu Jianghe and Lu Fengxian were, but in their opinion, since they were on the side of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, they were all members of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Although the Imperial Sky Pavilion seemed to be declining right now, it still had some foundation. Just as Lu Sanjin was about to step forward, Chu Xiu pressed down on his shoulder and said, I'll go first in this battle. You're the Imperial Sky Pavilion's Eastern Region advisor, so you represent the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion. Naturally, you'll be the one to fight the final battle. Yuan Fu walked out with his sword in hand and said coldly, "Don't worry, it will be the next round soon." Chu Xiu nodded in understanding and said, "That's right, it will be very soon." It was a fact that none of Gu Zun's descendants were weak. Even if Yuan Fu was dressed like a big green leaf and looked very funny, he was not an easy person to deal with. However, Chu Xiu was not easy to deal with either. Yuan Fu's hand gripped his green longsword. At this moment, Yuan Fu's aura suddenly changed. Even if some people thought he was arrogant and others thought he was funny, there was only one aura that Yuan Fu displayed at this moment, and that was boundless sharpness. The sword was unsheathed, and its sharpness shook the heavens. In an instant, even the vital energy of the heaven and earth within 300 feet of Yuan Fu became extremely sharp. Under Yuan Fu's control, any power turned into an extremely sharp sword that slashed at Chu Xiu. As soon as the sword was unsheathed, a sword domain was formed. The sword path of Sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage did not contain any special attributes. The path of Sword Venerable Ling Tian seemed to be able to unleash the sharpness of the sword path to the extreme. Deep within the boundless sword domain, the formation-breaking sword in Chu Xiu's hand erupted with an even more powerful sharpness. The ethereal slash and the sword intent of the formation-breaking sword fused together perfectly. The edge of the blade distorted the laws and tore apart the domain. Messy sword chi danced in all directions. A loud explosion rang out, and a powerful shockwave spread out in all directions. Even the surrounding formations were activated to the maximum. Xianyuan Wushuang, who was sitting below with a pale face, became even paler when he saw this scene. There was even a faint look of disbelief on his face. How long had it been since he last fought with Chu Xiu? How did Chu Xiu's strength increase so quickly? Yuan Fu's expression also changed slightly. Although he was arrogant, he would always use his full strength when he fought. This was his habit and the way his lineage had always fought. If he was defeated because he underestimated his opponent, it would be the greatest insult to the lineage of Sword Venerable Ling Tian, as well as the sword in his hand. In the end, even so, Chu Xiu was still evenly matched with him. Moreover, from the powerful force that came from the longsword, he could sense that Chu Xiu's physical strength was even stronger than his. Yuan Fu turned the longsword in his hand, and in an instant, thousands of sword shadows separated and fell from the sky. The power on each sword shadow seemed to be real, and each sword shadow contained incomparable sharpness. Although the sword principle of Sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage was strong, Chu Xiu's attainments in the sword principle were not inferior to Yuan Fu's. Moreover, in terms of strength, Chu Xiu was even better than Yuan Fu. After all, apart from the fact that he did not have a domain, he was no different from an existence in the profound understanding state. The formation-breaking sword slashed down, but it was not aimed at Yuan Fu, but at the ground. The powerful saber light penetrated the ground. Even the formation in the martial arts practice field of High Heaven Sect could not stop this power. In an instant, the powerful saber light penetrated the ground like an earth dragon turning over, wrapping Yuan Fu in it. 7 limits. Earth destruction. This was the first time Chu Xiu used the earth destruction sword since he obtained it from the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Its power was indeed much more amazing than the sea destruction sword he had mastered before. One was Ling Tian, one was earth destruction. The sword shadows from above and the saber light from below collided with each other, and the powerful energy fluctuations condensed into a storm that swept through the surrounding area. Without the protection of the spirit array, it would have easily pierced through High Heaven City. Qin Baiyuan raised his eyebrows and said, "Earth destruction of the heaven swallowing earth 7 limits? Interesting, this boy actually cultivates this kind of evil secret art. Is he not afraid of karma?" The reputation of the heaven swallowing earth 7 limits was quite big in the Daluotian world, but it only existed in legends. Moreover, legends were a bit too terrifying, and the few remaining 7 limits only existed in the hands of some top sects. They did not lack secret arts, so naturally they would not cultivate this thing. Young Kai did not expect to see one in Chu Xiu's body today. When the dust settled, Yuan Fu spoke with a gloomy expression. I didn't expect that I would really underestimate you. There aren't many among the primeval sovereign's successors who are proficient in the saber Dao. Whose successor are you? But it doesn't matter, since you can force me to. Before Yuan Fu could finish speaking, Chu Xiu had already formed a seal with both hands, and pure demon qi spread around him. In an instant, the heaven-weeping blood rain fell, and the demon qi giant hand tore through the void, grabbing at Yuan Fu. Chu Xiu did not have the time to listen to Yuan Fu's nagging. If he had the time to talk, why not just use his sword? The demon god giant hand descended from the sky. In his shock, Yuan Fu's longsword bloomed with light and grabbed at the demon god giant hand, forcibly using the sharpness of the sword Dao to resist the power of the great compassion mantra. But at this time, the demon god giant hand exploded in Chu Xiu's hand, and 3 triple destruction city arrows burst out in succession, but halfway through, they transformed into 6, 9, and then countless triple destruction city arrows. The aura on each triple destruction city arrow was incomparably real, and the power of nirvanic extermination on them seemed to want to corrode all power. This move of Chu Xiu gave everyone present a big fright. No one thought that Chu Xiu's extremely fierce and domineering martial Dao path could actually use such a terrifying illusion art. On the grandstand, Ling Hu Xianshan suddenly raised his eyebrows. Qin Baiyuan glanced at him and said, "You recognize this kind of illusion art?" Ling Hu Xianshan nodded and said, "I've seen it before, condensing illusion into reality. An old friend from the Sanskrit religion used it before. It was indeed very astonishing. Even I couldn't tell whether this kind of illusion art is real or fake." "Oh. When you were at Heaven and Earth Mystic Opening Realm, you actually couldn't beat the other party." Qin Baiyuan was somewhat surprised. Ling Hu Xianshan shook his head and said, "Of course I can beat him. If I want to kill him, it's a piece of cake. I told him at the beginning that no matter how real an illusion art is, it's still fake. Only one's own strength is the only thing that matters." Unfortunately, he was too stubborn. Because of this stubbornness, he indeed cultivated his illusion art to a superb level. But this also meant that he could never go any further. That old friend of mine also participated in my High Heaven Sex martial arts show not long ago, and should have returned to the Western domain's Sanskrit religion by now. But why does this Chu Xiu know his secret art? Is there some kind of karmic relationship between him and the Sanskrit religion? Ling Hu Xianshan was still puzzled, but at this time, Yuan Fu felt extremely dangerous. He couldn't tell whether these arrows were real or fake. The arrows had clearly turned from real to fake right in front of his eyes, but he couldn't tell which was real and which was fake. Seeing that those arrows with the power of nirvanic extermination were already in front of him, in the next moment, Yuan Fu suddenly gritted his teeth. From the pores all over his body, traces of blood qi floated out. Those blood qi that could not be seen by the naked eye were extremely sharp, faintly emitting a trace of sword qi. They tore through all the power in front of them, including those 3 Annihilation City arrows. They were also forcefully torn apart. Yuan Fu's sword Dao had already been cultivated to the bones. From top to bottom, everything in his body could be condensed into incomparably sharp sword qi. However, when the blood-colored sword qi dissipated, those 3 Annihilation City arrows were all shattered. Yuan Fu's heart sank, because he did not feel any power blocking. All of the arrows were all fake. With a loud bang, 3 Annihilation City arrows rose from under Yuan Fu's feet, and directly exploded on his body. In an instant, his protective sword qi was torn apart, and the world-annihilating fire engulfed his whole body. As soon as the power was released, the power of the Great Compassion mantra suddenly increased. The demon god's giant hand suddenly collapsed, and Yuan Fu immediately spat out a mouthful of blood. At this time, Chu Xiu's figure had already appeared in front of Yuan Fu. With one slash, Yuan Fu spat out another mouthful of blood. When the second slash landed, the hand that was holding the sword began to tremble, and the flesh cracked. By the time Chu Xiu slashed out the 3rd time, the long sword had already fallen out of his hand. His whole body was directly sent flying by Chu Xiu's slash, and his whole body hit the formation. Chapter 1187. In Chu Xiu's opinion, Yuan Fu's strength was not bad, But that was all. He had just stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm not long ago, so his accumulation of power was not deep. Although the martial arts of swordsman Ling Tian's lineage were indeed extraordinary, he did not seem to have much experience in fighting. One could tell from his moves that he had more than enough sharpness, but not enough killing intent. If Chu Xiu said that he was 100% sure of defeating such an opponent, it would be too conceited. It would be more like 99%. In the end, Chu Xiu did not even have to use his divine sense before Yuan Fu was defeated by Chu Xiu. It was almost a crushing defeat. Qi Wuhan's eyes revealed a trace of fear. When he first fought Chu Xiu, he felt that Chu Xiu was a great threat. In fact, in his opinion, Chu Xiu was even greater than the entire Imperial Sky Pavilion. At that time, he tried to persuade Yi Weikong to fight with Chu Xiu, but he was forced back by the Prime Master behind him. From the looks of it now, his worries weren't wrong. Chu Xiu's growth speed was simply too fast. Although he hadn't used his full strength, Qi Wuhan had a feeling that the current Chu Xiu was even stronger than the Chu Xiu he had fought in the past. Chu Xiu retreated and patted Lu Sanjin on the shoulder. Whether I can enter the divine cloud realm or not depends on you. In fact, Chu Xiu trusted Lu Sanjin. He trusted him as a person and trusted the old pavilion master's judgment. All along, Lu Sanjin had given people a feeling that he was not reliable and that he had a glib tongue. But in fact, Lu Sanjin had been the Eastern region wayfarer for so many years, and even Jiangzong, an expert of the mysterious heaven and earth realm, treated him politely. How could he be easy to deal with? At least, for a long time, Chu Xiu had not seen Lu Sanjin use his full strength. Lu Sanjin's character was very similar to that of Fang Qishao. However, the difference was that Fang Qishao was really funny. That was how his character was. As for Lu Sanjin, he pretended not to be serious, but in reality, he had more things on his shoulders than anyone else. Perhaps he could only use this kind of cheeky attitude to cover it up. Lu Sanjin nodded with a dignified expression. Chu Xiu had helped the Imperial Heaven Pavilion enough. He had already won 3 rounds. If he lost the last one and caused Chu Xiu to lose the qualification to cultivate in the Divine Cloud Realm, he would feel sorry for Chu Xiu. Moreover, aside from Chu Xiu, this battle also concerned the dignity of the Emperor Sky Pavilion and the Cold River City. Qi Wuhan was the heir of Cold River City, and had long been a famous figure in the East Domain. Meanwhile, Lu Sanjin was also the heir of the Imperial Sky Pavilion and the Eastern Region Wayfarer. Although he was slightly less famous than Qi Wuhan, he was still someone to be reckoned with. Therefore, the loser of this battle would lose the dignity of the whole sect. Strictly speaking, it was normal for Qi Wuhan to be a little older than Lu Sanjin and have a higher cultivation. However, most people in Jianghu would not be fair and considerate when judging things. At this time, Yin Lingzi, who had been sitting beside Lu Sanjin, suddenly said, "Brother Lu, don't be too stubborn about some things." Yin Lingzi was a member of the Spirit Treasure Temple, so it was not appropriate for him to intervene in the dispute between the two sections. Therefore, he just watched the battle without saying anything. At this time, he felt that Lu Sanjin actually had a desperate killing intent. He seemed to have guessed Lu Sanjin's thoughts and could not help but advise him. Lu Sanjin shook his head with a wry smile and said, "Thank you, fellow Taoist Yin Lingzi. However, there are some things that I have to be stubborn about." As Lu Sanjin's voice fell, he directly walked out and stood on the martial arts practice field. Qi Wuhan's eyes showed a touch of surprise. "Lu Sanjin, I didn't expect you to really dare to stand up today. You should know that you have no chance of winning against me. The gap of a great realm is not so easy to make up for." As the Eastern Territory wayfarer of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, Qi Wuhan naturally knew that Lu Sanjin was very strong. However, no matter how strong he was, he could only fight an ordinary heaven and earth profound enlightenment cultivator at most. Qi Wuhan, on the other hand, was not ordinary. Lu Sanjin said lightly, "Just because I have no chance of winning doesn't mean I dare not fight. Just like your Cold River City came here aggressively, didn't you also have to go back without accomplishing anything? If you want to destroy my Imperial Sky Pavilion, Yi Weikong can't do it, and neither can your generation. You're very confident." Qi Wuhan's eyes flashed with murderous intent. This was real murderous intent. This was the founding celebration of the High Heaven sect. The martial arts gambling fight had always been a tradition. Everyone resolved some conflicts, and at the same time, it was also a way to show the strength of their respective sections. Therefore, even if there were accidental injuries, no one had ever killed anyone. Now that Cold River City had shed all pretense of cordiality with the Imperial Sky Pavilion, they naturally didn't have to worry so much. Qi Wuhan really wanted to kill Lu Sanjin. The Imperial Sky Pavilion itself was already rotten. If the next successor died here, then the Imperial Sky Pavilion would really have no hope. Even if he risked the wrath of the High Heaven sect, it was still worth it as long as he could kill Lu Sanjin. Anyway, the relationship between his Cold River City and the High Heaven sect was not very good. While Qi Wuhan was still thinking whether it was worth killing Lu Sanjin or not, Lu Sanjin had already made his move. He flicked his sleeves, and 4 small swords slashed at Qi Wuhan. 2 of the small swords carried the power of yin and yang, and the other 2 carried the power of heaven and earth. The combination of the 4 attributes was like a sword array, and a large array was laid out under the entire martial arts practice field. As the small sword surged, a powerful aura carried a sword aura storm and slashed at Qi Wuhan. 4 supreme sword array? Is that all you've got? Yin and yang, heaven and earth, is infinitely close to the power of the principal origin, but unfortunately, it's still not enough. Your own power is not enough. Qi Wuhan directly opened his domain, and a blizzard instantly descended. Every wisp of storm was stained with a layer of sharpness, and it instantly swept the entire martial arts practice field. A sound of metal clashing came. Lu Sanjin felt the power on his 4 small swords was getting weaker and weaker, and his expression suddenly changed. Before he could react, a huge frost dragon suddenly emerged from the boundless storm. Qi Wuhan held the dragon's tail in his hand, and the dragon's body was straight, stabbing at Lu Sanjin like a big spear. Lu Sanjin wanted to dodge, but at the next moment, a chill spread around him. He realized that the blood and qi in his body seemed to be frozen, and he was unable to move a single step. With a loud shout, Lu Sanjin's body shone with golden energy. He formed a seal with his hands, and the Imperial Heaven Pavilion's secret technique, the Imperial Heaven Treasure Seal, condensed in front of him. The huge seal covered the sky, but it was used to block Qi Wuhan's frost dragon spear. With a loud bang, the Imperial Heaven Treasure Seal shattered, and Lu Sanjin was sent flying by the spear. Blood flowed uncontrollably from his mouth. At the sight of this, everyone present could not help but shake their heads. The difference in power foundation was too great. In the previous battles, Lu Fengxian had fought against Xianyuan Wushuang. Although his power foundation was not as strong as Xianyuan Wushuang's, his physical strength was extremely shocking, and it was enough to make up for the weakness in the power of his qi. When Lu Jiang he fought against Yin Xueli, he had just entered the mysterious heaven and earth realm, and his power foundation was not much stronger than Lu Jianghe's. Moreover, his technique was completely restrained, so it was normal for him to lose. As for Chu Xiu, he was not an ordinary person. His power foundation was even stronger than Yuan Fu, who had already reached the mysterious heaven and earth realm. Now it was Lu Sanjin's turn. As the Eastern Region Travel Advisor and the future heir of the Imperial Sky Pavilion, although his own strength was not bad, he was much weaker than Qi Wuhan in terms of strength and foundation. It was a situation where he was completely suppressed. At this moment, Qi Wuhan had heavily injured Lu Sanjin with a single strike of his spear. He directly waved his hand, and the boundless ice storm within his domain instantly wrapped around the 4 tiny swords. After that, he took a step forward while layers of ice appeared around him, and then he smashed his fist down towards Lu Sanjin. Another loud bang was heard, and Lu Sanjin was sent flying. What followed was basically a series of beatings. In the face of absolute power, Lu Sanjin did not have the ability to fight back at all. Lu Jianghe shook his head and said, TSK, that's terrible. This kid is a little weak, and he can't take it anymore. Chu Xiu said nonchalantly, don't worry, it's still early. How can the heir of a top sect like the Imperial Heaven Pavilion not have any trump cards? At this time, Qi Wuhan's eyes even revealed a hint of killing intent. He was considering whether he should kill Lu Sanjin in public on such an occasion. But at this moment Lu Sanjin, who had been suppressed by him all this while, suddenly had an extremely powerful force emerge from his body. It even dyed his eyes a golden color. By the time Qi Wuhan felt that something was wrong, Lu Sanjin's body had swelled up. His loose robe was torn apart, revealing a part of his skin that was covered in golden demonic patterns. There was a divine light in Lu Sanjin's eyes, and it instantly penetrated Qi Wuhan's mind, causing him to wail in pain. That was purely an injury to the primordial spirit. Caught off guard, Qi Wuhan did not even have time to defend himself. He did not know that Lu Sanjin knew a primordial spirit secret technique. At that moment, Lu Sanjin rushed up and hugged Qi Wuhan. He threw punches at him. The powerful force was like that of a demon, and it shook the entire martial arts field with loud bangs. Qi Wuhan wanted to break free, but he was shocked to find that the golden demonic patterns on Lu Sanjin's body had sealed all his essential qi and qi. Even his domain was beginning to dissipate. Moreover, that thing was extremely hot. It was as if it was a brand that was going to be branded from Lu Sanjin's body to his body. Qi Wuhan was shocked. A bloody mist appeared around him, and a part of his vital energy and blood erupted. Only then did he break free from Lu Sanjin's embrace. However, at the next moment, the demonic patterns around Lu Sanjin's body shone extremely brightly. He threw a punch and directly blasted Qi Wuhan out of the martial arts field, shattering the formation. Lingzi's eyes revealed a hint of surprise, and he mumbled, "Royal Heavenly Treasure Body. Brother Lu's main cultivation is actually the Royal Heavenly Treasure Body. He's really bold." Chapter 1188. As Chu Xiu cultivated the heavens sun-gazing at air skill, his spiritual sense was strong. Therefore, when he saw Lu Sanjin for the first time, he felt that there was something on Lu Sanjin's body. His strength was definitely not simple. However, he did not expect Lu Sanjin's outburst to be so ferocious that even Qi Wuhan could not withstand it. To be more precise, it was not that Lu Sanjin could not withstand it, but the strange golden demonic marks on his body had actually blocked Qi Wuhan's realm and qi. Chu Xiu turned to look at Lingzi and asked, "Brother Lingzi, do you recognize what Brother Lu is performing now?" Lingzi looked at Chu Xiu in surprise. "You're from the Imperial Sky Pavilion, but you don't even know what's on your own?" Although he was a little confused, he still explained in detail. The Imperial Heavenly Treasure Body is the most powerful secret skill of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. It's also the core secret skill of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. It was said that it originated from the ancient demonic gods. The Royal Heaven Pavilion's ancestor had found the remains of an ancient demonic god, then imprinted demonic prints on the remains and refined them into his own body, thus forming the Royal Heavenly Treasure physique. With the demonic marks, apart from the purest physical strength, it can block all other powers. It's extremely powerful. Although it's not a perfect cultivation skill, it can suppress most people's cultivation skills. It's a pity that this cultivation skill was lost later on. Chu Xiu pointed at Lu Sanjin in surprise and said, "Didn't you say that he's cultivating the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Body now? Moreover, this cultivation skill is the core cultivation skill of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. How can it be lost?" Lingzi explained, "Right now, Brother Lu's cultivation is actually forcefully cultivating. The things of the ancient demon god only belong to the ancient demon god. If humans cultivate it without permission, they'll attract great trouble. Therefore, the ancestors of the Imperial Sky Pavilion spent a few generations to come up with a body-tempering secret skill. It's specifically used to withstand the backlash of the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Body. However, before the great ancient calamity, the Imperial Sky Pavilion encountered a huge crisis. Although they managed to pull through in the end, that body-tempering technique was lost. Therefore, there were fewer and fewer people cultivating this technique in the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Even if they cultivated it, they wouldn't be able to use it normally and would have to bear the backlash of the demonic marks. They would be crippled after using it for a few times. Fortunately, the Imperial Sky Pavilion has many secret skills. Even without the Imperial Heavenly Treasure Body, it can still become a great sect. I didn't expect that the royal heavenly treasure physique, which hasn't appeared in the pugilistic world for a very long time, would appear once again. Based on Brother Lu's appearance, he's already completed cultivating this cultivation technique, and it's obvious how much pain he suffered during this process. Moreover, the slightest carelessness could cause his entire body to be crippled. Ling 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 spirit spirit. Ling spirit cheeses choose spirit. After hearing Yin Lingzi's words, Chu Xiu also felt that Lu Sanjin was really going all out. The backlash from the royal heavenly treasure body was simply comparable to a divine ability. Chi Chi time Luli Lululi, Lili Jin had Lu, Chi, Chi and Wan Jin Jin, Chi Chi, Chi Wan Chi Jin had time. Chi Wu Hen struggled to get up from the martial arts practice field, but he couldn't help but spit out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying by Lu Sanjin's imperial heavenly treasure body, due to a moment of carelessness. In fact, he had suffered some injuries. However, compared to Lu Sanjin, who was completely defenseless, he still had some combat power left. Therefore, Chi Wu Hen wore a ferocious expression and wanted to get up to fight again. At this moment, Chu Xiu said coldly, "Is life and death also necessary in a martial arts duel? You've been sent flying out of the arena, and it's still not considered a loss? Chi Wu Hen, if you're not convinced, you can increase the stakes. I'll play with you." At this moment, Qin Baiyuan coughed and said, "Okay, today is the High Heaven Sect's celebration. It's not appropriate to kill someone. Chi Wu Hen, your Cold River City can afford to lose, right?" Hearing Qin Baiyuan's words, Chi Wu Hen snorted and retreated. At the same time, he blamed himself for underestimating his opponent. However, he didn't expect that Lu Sanjin, as the Eastern Territory partner and the next successor of the Emperor Heaven Pavilion, would take such a risk to cultivate this kind of secret art. It didn't make sense. Caught off guard, it was too late for him to counterattack. If it was a life and death battle, he, Lu Sanjin, would already be dead. Chu Xiu asked someone to bring Lu Sanjin, who was on the verge of death, down to Lu Jianghe and Lu Fengxian for the time being. He then cupped his fists at Qin Baiyuan and said, "It seems that I've won this round. High Heaven Sect should be willing to admit defeat, right?" Qin Baiyuan snorted coldly and said, "Don't worry, my High Heaven Sect can afford to lose." After saying that, Qin Baiyuan looked at the crowd and said indifferently, "Who else wants to participate in the martial arts duel?" Everyone present looked at each other, but no one said anything. In fact, there were many people who were willing to participate in the martial arts duel in the past. In any case, they could get some prizes just by going on stage, so why not? It was just that this year's martial arts duel was a bit too bloody. Several big sects had already gone all out, so they felt that something was wrong, but they didn't dare to jump out again. Seeing that no one wanted to continue participating, Qin Baiyuan said a few more polite words, and High Heaven Sect's celebration was announced to be over. Some sects chose to leave directly, while some sects wanted to curry favor with High Heaven Sect, so they stayed to flatter them. Lu Sanjin's injury had not yet healed, so he was taken away by Lu Jianghe and Lu Fengxian to rest, while Chu Xiu was taken by Qin Baiyuan into the spirit cloud realm to cultivate. This was the first time that Chu Xiu was so close to Dugu Weiwei, and for some reason, he felt a burst of excitement in his heart. Since he transmigrated to the present, there were many riddles that he had been puzzled about. Perhaps he would be able to solve them today. Even with Chu Xiu's state of mind cultivation, he couldn't help feeling a little excited. Qin Baiyuan led Chu Xiu to open several spirit array gates, and each spirit array could make Chu Xiu feel extremely powerful. It was easy to imagine how strict the security of this place was. After opening the last spirit array gate, a space portal appeared in front of Chu Xiu. Qin Baiyuan said in a deep voice, "I will open the spirit array later, and you can enter directly. However, you can only stay inside for 7 days. It's not that my High Heaven Sect is stingy, but the yuan-qi accumulated in the spirit cloud realm during this period will dissipate within 7 days after it is opened. If the entrance is not closed within 7 days, it will cause more world yuan-qi to dissipate, which will affect the source of this blessed land." Chu Xiu nodded. He wasn't really going there for cultivation, he just wanted to find an answer. 7 days was enough. At this time, Qin Baiyuan suddenly said with a solemn expression, There is one more thing you have to remember. The spirit cloud realm is not only the blessed land with the densest yuan qi in the imperial sky pavilion, but there is also an extremely terrifying existence sealed inside. Although it is still sealed, no one knows what will happen if you get close to it. So you can enter and cultivate, but you can only stay within 1,000 feet of it. Don't go deeper. Otherwise, if something happens to you and you die inside, even if your master Guzun and the Imperial Sky Pavilion come to me to ask for you, it will be useless. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding. At this time, Qin Baiyuan also opened the spirit array, and Chu Xiu immediately entered it without saying anything. The moment he stepped into the spirit cloud realm, Chu Xiu's eyes were immediately wrapped in a thick fog. To be precise, it was not a thick fog, but the world yuan qi that was so thick that it had even formed a liquid fog. Cultivating in such a dense world yuan qi, every time he breathed, it was like swallowing a level 7 or 8 elixir. In the past, Chu Xiu would definitely not waste any time, and immediately began to cultivate. However, at this time, Chu Xiu was not in the mood for this. His heart had begun to throb violently. He had a feeling that what he was looking for was right in front of him, right there. This feeling guided his footsteps forward. Although Qin Baiyuan had instructed Chu Xiu not to enter the depths of the forest, Chu Xiu had long since thrown these words to who knows where. At this time, although Chu Xiu was walking according to his feelings, his mental strength was also extremely tense, and he did not dare to relax at all. The further he went, the thicker the fog became. The surroundings were extremely quiet, and only the sound of Chu Xiu's footsteps could be heard, as if he was walking in a boundless void. At this moment, a voice suddenly rang in his ears. "You're finally here. You're faster than I thought." Chu Xiu was suddenly shocked. He took a few steps forward, and the fog in front of him became thinner and thinner. In front of Chu Xiu was a big spirit array shining with dazzling light. In the center of the big spirit array, 8 huge bronze pillars stood in a circle. Each bronze pillar was engraved with complex formation patterns, and a chain was separated from the bronze pillar to the center of the spirit array. In the center of the spirit array, there was also a bronze pillar. The only difference was that a black-robed figure was tied to the bronze pillar by an iron chain. Countless gang qi, lightning, and even earth, wind, water, fire, and other forces bombarded his body, but he was like a dead man, motionless, and those forces could not really smash him into pieces. Perhaps because he sensed Chu Xiu's arrival, he raised his head, revealing a chiseled face. He could not be considered young, nor could he be considered old, but his eyes were pitch black and surging with demonic qi. This face was exactly the same as the face of Dugu Weiwei that Chu Xiu had seen in the illusion. This was really the place where Dugu Weiwei was imprisoned. Seeing Chu Xiu coming, Dugu Weiwei revealed a smile on his face. It was an extremely pure smile, and no one could see any emotions. Looking at the existence in front of him, Chu Xiu had a stomach full of questions, but in the end he only said, "You are Dugu Weiwei? Then who am I?" With a smile still on his face, Dugu Weiwei shook his head and said, "I am not Dugu Weiwei, and you are not Dugu Weiwei. You are you and I am me. You, me, and him. Only when we are together can we be the only one." Chapter 1189. Looking at Dugu Weiwei in front of him, and listening to the words that seemed to have been said to him, Chu Xiu suddenly realized that the Dugu Weiwei he saw was not the same Dugu Weiwei. He had seen many Dugu Weiwos in his illusions. Other than the one in the Devil Sex Inheritance, there were only 2 main Dugu Weiwos. One of them was the Dugu Weiwa in front of him, and the other was the Dugu Weiwa who was in the boundless sea of blood. Now that he thought about it, Chu Xiu found that although they looked exactly the same, their temperament was somewhat different. You are you and I am me. But who are you and who am I? I want to know the answer. Chu Xiu took a deep breath and tried to suppress his emotions. Dugu Weiwei smiled and said, "Don't worry. Since you have found this place, of course, I will tell you. Where should I start? Well, you should know the secret technique of 3 pure ones in 3 pure temple. The heaven and earth souls are always outside, but the life soul is alone in the body. The Taoist priests in 3 pure temple do have some skills. This secret technique is very interesting. After I got it, or rather, after Dugu Weiwei got it, He transformed it into a soul-splitting technique. One body with 3 souls, 3 incarnations. I am the heaven soul, and you are the earth soul. Hearing Dugu Weiwei, or more accurately, Dugu Weiwei's heaven soul, say this, Chu Xiu could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. He had mixed feelings. In the past, Lu Jiang he had told him that his appearance was exactly the same as the incarnation of Dugu Weiwei's earth soul. Now it seemed that this was indeed the case. He was not the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei, but a part of Dugu Weiwei. This feeling made Chu Xiu feel a little awkward, and even a little resistant. What about the life soul? Where is the life soul? Most importantly, what are you going to do with me? Did you leave so many arrangements in the lower realm to fuse the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and fate? Also, what's with the memories of my past life? Tian Hun shook his head and said, I know you have many questions. Tell me slowly. Where should I start? Let's start with Dugu Weiwei's arrival in the Daluotian. Although the Daluotian people were deserters from the great ancient calamity, one had to admit that they were still capable. No one was a match for Dugu Weiwei, but they still joined forces and used all the divine abilities of their sex, sharing them with each other. They even used countless trump cards and secret arts to destroy Dugu Weiwei's body. Since you're here, you should know what happened in that battle. The eternal demon pill is not truly indestructible. After a body has been destroyed once, if it is destroyed again, it will not be able to recover in a short period of time. Dugu Weiwei was not confident of winning that battle. Thus, when he took over another body, it was no longer himself. Instead, it was me, the heavenly soul. Speaking to this point, there was a hint of self-mockery on Tian Hun's face. I'm a scapegoat and have been sealed here. The Daluotian people are also idiots. They thought that they had won and sealed Dugu Weiwei. In reality, I'm only a part of him. Meanwhile, Dugu Weiwei's true consciousness, which is his life soul, is hiding in the netherworld sky and recovering its power. Since you were able to obtain many arrangements left behind by Dugu Weiwei in the lower realm, you must have seen him. What about me? Why was I split up as an earth soul? Tian Hun said, You're different from me. To be precise, you're more important than me. I'm just a scapegoat, while you're the key to Dugu Weiwei's plan. Plan? What plan? A plan to successfully find the longevity heaven. Tian Hun took a deep breath and said, There are 5 heaven realms in this world. In ancient times, the place where the ancient cultivators lived was called the upper realm. There's also the lower realm, which overlaps with the upper realm. The great ancient calamity only destroyed the upper realm. Some damaged ruins merged with the lower realm, and in the end, it became the lower realm. The netherworld sky, where Dugu Weiwei's life soul is filled with evil ghosts. It's the place where the yin energy in the world gathers. Apart from him, even Ning Xuanji, the old Taoist priest, cannot enter. The rest is the Daluotian you saw. As for the other one, it's the legendary longevity heaven. Immortality, indestructibility, impermanence, destruction, emptiness transcending the world. It's the real transcendence. Dugu Weiwei had already reached the peak of the 9th level of martial immortal. In fact, he could not even be considered a martial immortal. Instead, he was in existence above the entire martial immortal realm. However, in order to truly transcend, to truly become undying and indestructible, he must enter the path of longevity. In order to enter the celestial longevity plane, one must gather all 3 essences. The origin is the most basic rule of power in the whole world. It's divided into yin and yang origins. The extreme yin origin is the demonic Tao origin. Therefore, to enter the longevity heaven, he must gather 3 demonic Tao origins or 3 extreme yang origins. Among them, he had already obtained the origin of diabolism of absolute heaven during the fierce battle. If his true body's life spirit headed to the Yellow Springs heaven, he would be able to seize the origin of diabolism of Yellow Springs heaven as well. Therefore, he was only left with the origin of diabolism of the lower realm that he had yet to obtain. Dugu Weiwei dominated the martial world in the lower realm, but he has never found the demonic Tao origin that belongs to the mortal world. This is karma and also fate. However, after he deduced the heaven's sun gazing at air to the peak, he saw a glimmer of possibility. In 500 years, the demonic Tao origin will appear in the lower realm. Only then can he obtain it. I, a heavenly soul, am imprisoned here. It's difficult to enter the netherworld sky, and it's even more difficult to leave. At least for now he can't leave. Therefore, the only person who can obtain the demonic Tao origin in the mortal world is you. He threw you, an earthly soul, into the spiritual reincarnation. You only woke up 500 years later. What Tianhun had said was a huge blow to Chu Xiao. After a long while, he had digested all this information and asked, "Does that mean that my memories from my previous life are fake?" Heavenly Soul shook his head and said, "I don't know what you experienced in your previous life, but those are not fake. This world is divided into 5 worlds. Under the reincarnation of time and space, what you experienced is, of course, real, but a part of it is fake. When you wake up, do you think that you can see the future? But how do you know that what you see in the future is real? Those things are just the karma of the future that Dugu Weiwei deduced using the heaven's sun gazing at air technique. After it is engraved in the depths of your soul, it appears. Therefore, when your abilities become stronger and you change more karma, those things will truly disappear." Chu Xiao closed his eyes. He understood. He finally understood. His memories had indeed been tampered with. The so-called future was actually just the karma that the heaven's sun gazing at air technique had deduced. At that moment, Chu Xiao's emotions were extremely complicated. Previously, he had always thought that he was the reincarnation of Dugu Weiwei. In the end, only now did he know that his true identity was not even as good as a reincarnation. At the very least, the reincarnation would be him, but now he was not even a person. He was just a clone of Dugu Weiwei. This situation made Chu Xiao somewhat resistant and somewhat unacceptable. At that moment, Tianhun suddenly said, "Okay, I've said everything that needs to be said. Now it's time to talk about our own matters. To be precise, it's about the two of us." "What matters?" Tianhun laughed coldly and said, "I can feel that ever since you entered the soul cloud realm, you've been resisting. You've been carefully exploring. Therefore, I only have one question for you now. Do you want to be Dugu Weiwei or Chu Xiao?" "Of course it's Chu Xiao," Chu Xiao said in a low voice. "The demon master who dominated the world 500 years ago was not me. The one who stands at the peak of the pugilistic world 500 years later is me, Chu Xiao." Tianhun suddenly laughed out loud and said, "As expected of an earthly soul, you and I were once one entity. Our thoughts are exactly the same. There's one thing I haven't told you. Dugu Weiwei's plan was perfect. I, a heavenly soul, became his scapegoat and was imprisoned in the Dalyu Ocean. The real soul seized the origin of the netherworld demonic path, accumulated power, and recuperated. As an earthly soul, you Chu Xiao waited for 500 years in the samsara. When you woke up, you cultivated to the peak and seized the origin of the heavenly demonic path for him. Then the 3 souls merged into one and opened the everlasting heaven. In the end, you became immortal and completely detached. But nothing in this world is perfect. Naturally, plans are the same. There's a loophole in Dugu Weiwei's plan." "What loophole?" "You and I are the loophole." Tianhun laughed coldly and said, "The only thing that Dugu Weiwei didn't take into account was time. Time can change many things. The wonders of creation are beyond his imagination. 500 years is too long. It's so long that I, a heavenly soul, and you, an earthly soul, have developed your own consciousness. This shouldn't have happened. The 3 souls merged into one, and the soul-splitting technique was just splitting the soul and not independent. However, ever since Dugu Weiwei entered the netherworld heaven 500 years ago, he could no longer control me, a heavenly soul, because of the separation between worlds. Thus, I don't know when it happened. I don't know if it happened 300 or 200 years ago, but I developed my own consciousness. I have all the memories of Dugu Weiwei before he entered the netherworld heaven, but I know that I'm not Dugu Weiwei. And you Chu Xiao, after you were split, although I don't know what you experienced, I'm sure that you weren't controlled by Dugu Weiwei. Otherwise, you wouldn't have come here. Heavenly souls and earthly souls can only be devoured. There's no need for us to meet. Previously, I tried to use my mental power to sense you, but it was a world away, and there was only a vague mark. Now that you're in front of me, I can finally confirm this. When he said this, the heavenly soul's expression gradually became distorted. I was created by Duguwewe, but I replaced him and was trapped here for 500 years. I suffered 500 years of loneliness. I've already repaid this karma. I'm not Duguwewe, nor am I a heavenly soul. I'm the great demon Dugu, who was sealed by the Daluotian experts for 500 years. Chapter 1190. The voice of heavenly soul, or rather the great demon Dugu, resounded in Chushio's mind, causing his thoughts to run wild. He was Chushio. He had not been Duguwewe in the past, and he would not be Duguwewe in the future either. However, unlike heavenly soul, who had thoughts of repaying the karma, Chushio was much more heartless. He did not care who had created his existence. He was Chushio, he was himself. There was no memory of Duguwewe in his mind. After heavenly soul had vented his emotions, Chushio asked in a low voice, "So what do you plan to do now? You've known all this for 500 years, but I only found out the truth now. You should have a plan, right?" Tianhun squinted his eyes and said, "Of course there is. You and I are both split from Duguwewa. In a certain sense, although we have already developed our own consciousness and have our own personalities, we are still very similar in some aspects. I like to plan before taking action. I believe you are the same, right?" Chushio nodded. In fact, heavenly soul's expression was exactly the same as when he was about to plot against someone. However, after interacting with him for such a short period of time, Chushio could more or less see what kind of personality heavenly soul had. If Chushio's personality was gloomy and calm, and he was rarely dominated by his own strange emotions, heavenly soul was wild and domineering. He had a strong personality and could not control his own emotions. He had been trapped for 500 years, but he was still agitated at the mention of this matter. On the other hand, although Chushio had just learned the truth and was still agitated, he was able to control his emotions. At the very least, he could not let his emotions show on a large scale. What kind of person was Duguwewe's real body, which was his life soul? Chushio could not help but think of the figure sitting on the white bone throne, and stepping on the countless evil spirits and ghosts in the sea of blood. Powerful. Extremely powerful. The only word that Chushio could think of was pitiful. At this moment, Tianhun said in a low voice, "The three souls have separated. To be more precise, in Duguwewe's eyes, you and I should be traitors. Therefore, when he breaks free from the netherworld heaven, he will definitely come to us for fusion. Of course, to him, it's fusion, but to us, it's devouring. He will retain all of our memories, but his own consciousness will be completely erased. So before he comes, we must grow strong enough to fight against him." "That's right. Did you obtain the source of the devil path in the lower realms?" Chushio had a faint guess in his heart, but he still shook his head and said, "No, if you didn't tell me, I wouldn't even know about the existence of an origin." Tianhun nodded and said, "That's good too. As long as we don't get our hands on the demonic Tao source, Duguwewe won't touch you for now." Chushio narrowed his eyes and said, "So now you're going to ask me to let you go?" Tianhun suddenly laughed and said, "As I said, although you and I now have our own consciousnesses and are two different people, you and I are, after all, existences of the same origin. In some aspects, we are still very consistent. I can feel that you are still wary of me, but it doesn't matter, it's normal. If you didn't even have this vigilance, even if the arrangements that Duguwewe left for you allowed your strength to improve by leaps and bounds, you wouldn't have been able to live until now, let alone come to the Daluotian continent. Now you don't have to help me with anything, and you can't help me. Do you see those bronze pillars around me? They were created by the combined power of 9 top sects: High Heaven Sect, Royal Sky Pavilion, Mysterious Heaven Territory, 3 Pure Temple, Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple, Brahma Religion, and Sword Sect. Moreover, 500 years ago, almost all the sects took out their trump cards to support the operation of the Spirit Array. Even after 500 years, the Spirit Array has not weakened in the slightest, and is still in its peak state. The power stored can even last for another 1,000 years. With your current strength, You can't break the spirit array at all, nor can you save me. Even if a martial immortal below the 7th heavenly layer came, it would be useless. Hearing Tianhuan's words, Chu Xiu couldn't help but be speechless. Exactly how many people had Dugu Weiwa killed 500 years ago? To actually cause the martial artists of the exalted heaven to fear him to such an extent, practically wishing for nothing more than to use the power of the entire exalted heaven to seal him. In fact, Dugu Weiwei's choice back then was not wrong. If he hadn't chosen to retreat and use Tianhun as bait to attract the Daluotian continent's attention, the Daluotian continent might have used the power of an entire world to deal with him. Dugu Weiwei was an existence that surpassed the 9th level of martial immortal, but he was not a true god. He was unable to fight against an entire world with his own strength. Tianhun continued. So you don't have to worry about me now. If you and I don't want to be devoured by Dugu Weiwei, the key lies with you. Among the heavenly, earthly, and earthly souls, the life soul where Dugu Weiwei's consciousness was located was definitely the strongest. 500 years had passed. He had most likely recovered his body and obtained the source demon of the Yellow Springs Heaven. He had also borrowed the power of an entire world in the Yellow Springs Heaven to cultivate. His strength had even surpassed his state when he fought against the Daluotian continent's experts 500 years ago. Without you and me, the heavenly soul and the earthly soul, Dugu Weiwa would only lose a soul-splitting technique. In addition, his body would not be complete, so it would affect his transcendence. Other than that, his strength would not be affected at all. As for me, you've seen it for yourself. I'm a cripple after being sealed here. Furthermore, even if I were to leave, recover my body, and cultivate to my peak again, I would at most be at the level of Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago. I would still be defeated by him. But you earthly soul Chu Xiu, you're different. In the past, Dugu Weiwei could not find the source demon of the Yellow Springs Heaven in the lower realms. He believed that it was because of karma that he could not obtain the source demon of the Yellow Springs Heaven. Thus, he sent your spirit into the reincarnation of time and space to wash away the mark that belonged to Dugu Weiwei on your body. He let you grow and find the source demon of the Yellow Springs Heaven. In this way, you were the one who was the least affected by Dugu Weiwei. Compared to me, you are a completely new existence, and you have a more limitless future. The heavenly soul gazed at Chu Xiu and said, What I have more than you are Dugu Weiwei's memories. These memories are enough for me to help you grow faster and smoothly step through those bottlenecks. As for the rest, you'll have to rely on yourself. Once you've grown to the point where you can rival Dugu Weiwa and walk a completely different path from him, you'll let me out. Then you and I will kill Dugu Weiwa together. Only when he is dead can you and I be truly independent. You don't have to worry about being devoured at any time. Chu Xiu nodded. The heavenly soul really knew him very well. He really could not let the heavenly soul out now. Chu Xiu never trusted anyone. He liked to put everything under his control. Now he felt that he could not control the heavenly soul, so he was not willing to let him out. If he waited until he grew to the point where he could control everything in the future, he would let the heavenly soul out. But how can I contact you? I belong to another force in the Daluotian, not the High Heaven sect. Therefore, I can only enter the spiritual cloud realm once. Otherwise, unless I destroy the High Heaven sect directly, I will have almost no chance to enter again. The heavenly soul said, It's simple. Although this spirit array completely seals my physical strength, and even my Yuan spirit has certain restrictions, over the years, my Yuan spirit has actually grown a little, so I can contact the outside world through a secret method. With that, the golden light of the Yuan spirit directly transformed into a set of seals behind Tianhuan's head. Remember these seals. You need to find me for some time. Make the seals with the purest power of the Yuan spirit, and I will be able to sense it. But you have to pay attention to the time. This kind of seal that communicates with the Yuan spirit consumes a lot of the power of the Yuan spirit. After memorizing this set of seals, Chu Xiu said, I can stay in the spiritual cloud realm for 7 days, because I am now stuck in a bottleneck. I have actually already stepped into the mysterious heaven and earth realm, but I still can't condense a domain, so I can't really step into the mysterious heaven and earth realm perfectly. Since the heavenly soul had said that the two sides were cooperating, Chu Xiu did not need to be polite with him. The heavenly soul had all the memories of Dugu Weiwei 500 years ago, so his attainments in martial arts must be far superior to Chu Xiu's. Therefore, this problem that had troubled Chu Xiu for a long time might not be difficult for the heavenly soul. This is simple. First, tell me about your own martial arts. Although my Yuan spirit can vaguely sense many things in your body, I can't sense the specific martial arts and so on. After Chu Xiu had roughly explained his own martial arts to the heavenly soul, the heavenly soul thought for a while and said, "It seems that you have used many of the arrangements left by Dugu Weiwei in the mortal world, but you still walked a different path. What is a domain? A domain is a world that you build after you control the rules. Some people have an extreme understanding of fire, so their domain is fire. Some people have an extreme understanding of ice, so their domain is ice. But you are different. You don't have to consider those ordinary domains. You have learned a variety of things, but when all kinds of martial arts are condensed to the extreme, it is nothing more than fighting and killing. Don't think about which power to choose for yourself. You are the most respected power in every power. Within the domain, you are the only one in the world. This is the domain that you should control." As the heavenly soul's voice fell, his Yuan spirit turned into a golden light and displayed various changes of rules in midair. This most direct observation was more useful than any guidance or words. It was no wonder that the heavenly soul said that he could help Chu Xiu overcome these bottlenecks. Chu Xiu sat cross-legged on the ground, and the various powers in his body began to merge. The rich spiritual energy of the heaven and earth in the spiritual sky realm surged into Chu Xiu's body frantically, causing his power and aura to soar instantly. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.